Hello.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
Hiya, Sarah.
How's everything going, Ken?
Good. Everything's good.
Awesome. Hi, Steve.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi, Mike. How's
Hey,
have you been?
good. All right. Pretty
Very
good. And you guys?
Doing good.
No, all right. I finally figured out how to work this screen. I got it bigger.
Very
Yeah.
nice.
Hello, Kath.
Hi, Kathy.
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
We hear you, Bill.
Great. I knew hope somebody would respond.
We can hear you, but we can't see you, Bill.
No, I know. I figured you liked it that way.
Oh. Let's not get personal now.
Actually, I'm having trouble with the video here.
Hello, Stephen.
What's up, Mike?
Too much?
Congrats.
A what?
Graduation. Is that it?
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, now she's stressing out studying for the CPA.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
3 months. Put herself away.
Well, she's 4 days into the first, I guess, chapter of the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's stressing. So
Yeah.
I said, just lock your door and stay in your room. You'll be fine.
Exactly. Yep.
Because I can't help her.
I couldn't help her either. You know, it stands for can't pass again.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I think it's smart though. These kids are doing it as soon as they graduate. This way,
But yeah, they should. Yeah.
They're still in their study mode. So
Yep.
yeah, she'll get through it.
Yeah, she will. We all did.
Yep.
Excuse me, on a serious note, I am having trouble with the video. It's telling me to start another video camera in settings, which can't seem to do. I'm going to get out and come back. Or Vinny, are you there?
Yeah, Bill, on the little video camera, you click on the arrow and then select your camera. That should probably do it. If not, just exit out and come back in.
Hang on, you're saying a little video camera.
You also may need to upgrade your Ring Central.
Oh, God almighty.
Little note came up that said, your participants need to upgrade to the latest version of Ring Central to share their screen.
That was pretty fast.
All right, I'm going to leave then.
Goodbye.
How you doing, Kath? How are you?
I guess I go. I'm good, just tired. I spent an hour and a half, no, close to 2 hours in the city, just trying to get home
Oh, boy.
this afternoon. People, you know, a city's back in business. Put it that way.
I know.
Lots of people. Yeah, I was on, I was on the east side on 53rd Street
Right,
and 3rd Avenue. So
yeah. So you had to travel all the way to the west side. What did you take, the tunnel or the?
tunnel, the tunnel, the Lincoln Tunnel. Usually, you know, I left there about 4:10. I got home at 6:15.
Oh, boy.
But most of the time was in the city.
Yeah. Oh, well. Is Don on yet?
Don't see him.
Did everybody get get a copy of the resolution that Don just sent out a little while ago?
Yes.
No.
Yeah, he mailed it out. It's at 7:14.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just got it now. I have it on my phone.
Well, we'll talk about it online. We can make the determination whether we want to take some time or whether we want to approve it later at another date or approve it now. So we'll see what happens.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Dale.
Hi,
Hello,
Don.
Adele.
And I see Don just joined. Hi, Don.
Hello, I'm having
Hi, Don.
technical difficulties again, so I'm on an iPhone. I don't know what's going on with my laptop.
You have to update, Ring Central, somebody said. I didn't know who was talking.
No, it's not that, Kathy. The thing won't go on. It's
Oh,
plugged in.
okay.
I got plenty of battery, but it won't go on.
I had that problem this afternoon. I plugged it in for the first time in a couple weeks, and it had to go through all the prompts, reboot, update, and then it took about 20 minutes, but it worked. So
Yeah, well, I
maybe
had that problem last month, and then I thought it was fixed. So I don't know, but I'm here.
Oh,
Do we have Victor on board?
What's that?
Yeah,
Is Victor on board yet?
I
Are
don't see him.
you talking to me, Steve?
no,
Yeah,
Victor.
Oh.
I don't see him here yet.
Let me know if you can hear my grandchildren, because I'll mute myself if that's the case.
Hi, Kathy.
Just making sure I got video now. Can everybody hear me?
yes,
Yeah,
we
we
can.
can see you.
Sorry about that. Thank you.
Victor?
All right, Steve, we're past 7:30.
Okay, all right. In that case, Victor can pick it up when he comes on. So, with that being said, let's open the board and welcome everybody to the planning board meeting in Garwood on of June 23rd, 2021. And pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Law, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by publication in the Westfield Leader and by posting and filing of said notice in the office of the municipal clerk. This is a regular scheduled meeting of the board. And in response to the COVID-19 at this point, all the postings and connectivity for this meeting, both phone line and audio visual, have been posted at the borough website. So with that, I don't know if we have a flag to show, but if we don't, I'd still like to have a moment of silence and a flag salute. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America
and to the
and to the
republic
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Steve. Adele, roll call, please.
Mayor Tedisco,
Here.
Ken Capobianco,
Here.
Councilman Graham,
Here.
Stephen Greet,
Here.
Kathy Villaggio,
Here.
William Niersted,
Here.
Paul Tarantino,
Here.
Steve Napolitano,
Here.
Mike Vina,
Here.
Steve Barkin, Richard McCormick is excused, Stephanie Bianco.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Well, you might not want to make reference that Steve Barkan will have to recuse himself from this meeting regardless of whether he's here or not. He gave me that information, conveyed that information to me earlier in the week.
Okay, I'll make a note of it.
Okay. With that being said, we've just received the minutes. Don, how long ago?
You mean the minutes or the resolution?
The resolution, I'm sorry.
I would say approximately 15 minutes.
Okay. All right. So
It's a resolution of denial. Why don't we hold it till later in the meeting?
that sounds good. That sounds like a plan.
We do have the minutes, though.
But if we have, if everyone has had an opportunity to read the minutes of the May 26th meeting, I can hear a motion to adopt the minutes. Do we hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing
I'll
none, motion
abstain.
carries. Thank you.
I abstain.
And now we'll, well, you know what, that's a good idea. We'll hold on to the resolution maybe till the end of the meeting. And take a little time to review it. With that being said, we'll move on to the application. The application is for case PB 21-02 at 75 North Avenue, the Garwood Paperboard redevelopment area. And just as a way of opening, the review had been submitted to Victor, and there were numerous items that required both updating, changing, and possibly additions. That being said, I really strongly believe that we're not going to be able to have a vote on this application tonight. What I will say is that we can go forward with the planning and zoning review, and if the applicant wishes, he can go forward with the expert witnesses. However, let it be known that it's possible that he may have to bring them back when the changes are made by his office on the circulated documents that will be necessary. So we'll have to find out from the applicant on whether or not he wants to bring those experts forward tonight, or whether he just wants to proceed with the planning and the zoning portion of it.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Peter Flannery, the law firm Bisgayer Hoff, on behalf of the applicant Garwood Paper Urban Renewal Associates, LLC. This is for 75 North Avenue, Block 211, Lot 6, the paperboard redevelopment area and redevelopment plan. Notice was provided, and I ask that this board take jurisdiction over the application.
Yes.
Thank you. In response to the chairman's comments, I just want to say that, yes, the applicant had originally, when it applied back in February, had applied for preliminary and final major site plan, minor subdivision, and variance approvals for the inclusionary development and self-storage facility proposed on the property. Since that time, there was a recent review letter from Harbor Consultants, June 21st, which indicated that there were still some issues that needed to be discussed in greater detail, specifically regarding stormwater, grading, drainage, landscaping and lighting. And Harbor Consultants, the board's engineer, advised that the board not proceed with an approval of any final site plan at this evening's hearing. The applicant is in agreement with that, but that being said, the applicant proposes that we at least go forward with general engineering testimony, the testimony of our architects, and our planner's testimony, with the idea of perhaps if we complete our testimony this evening, the board could vote on a preliminary approval and variance approval, leaving the final site plan and the subdivision approval for a later date once we submit the additional items and resolve some of those outstanding issues that really can't be discussed in detail. So I guess I'd like the board's input, whether the board would be willing to proceed in that fashion, hear testimony with the understanding that the witnesses would return for another hearing to talk about the final site plan and subdivision approvals, but with the idea that the board could vote on the variances and the preliminary site plan this evening.
From my own perspective, what I've seen of the documentation, and I have reviewed both Victor's letter or the whole review process of this, and also the documents themselves. And I really strongly believe that tonight we will not be able to go forward with any kind of an actual vote forward. However, that being said, also is that I really think that you can present your planning and zoning in depth. I think you'll find that there's going to be quite a few questions, and I may be wrong, but I don't think so. There may be quite a few questions of our board in relationship to some of these documents that were presented. And I'm not saying that that's the negative in any way, but I'm just saying that it's in my opinion, it's probable that we will not get to a vote tonight.
Well, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Flannery, it just seems to me either way, we're going to be proceeding in the same way right now, which is that the applicant is going to begin to adduce testimony, and we can address later in the evening whether we're anywhere close to a vote or not. But I don't think that's really affecting too much of what we're doing now, Mr. Flannery.
That's right.
Okay, that's fine, then let's proceed.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Bill.
one other procedural item. Do we want to set a time frame here? Do we want to stop at 10:30 or what? How long do we want to proceed?
I think we should have a stop point at no later than 10:30. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, my suggestion would be, it's what's the usual, no new witness after them. But what I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, is that we evaluate where we are at 10 o'clock. And the other thing that maybe we should just discuss very briefly for a moment is with the conclusion of the state of emergency, the probability that when this matter continues, that we will likely be in person, not virtual.
And what I'm going to ask maybe right now is an appropriate time to do this then. And I know, I would suspect that there are some board members here that may have already made plans thinking that this was going to be, the next meeting would be a virtual meeting as well. So I want to ensure that we're going to have a quorum for that meeting in July 28th. Yes, Kathy?
I have a question with regard to that, Steve. I don't know what the law is on virtual and on-site, but isn't there something like I heard? I don't know what the ruling is with the state, what we can do and what we're not allowed to do, but I think we can do both.
Well, I asked Don to research that a little bit, and Don, maybe you can weigh in on that.
Yes, I will say first, preliminarily, Kathy, I did reach out by email to the DCA last week to try to get clarification in writing on this issue. I received no response at all from the DCA. I reached out to a a number of attorneys say, in fact, as late as today in the New Jersey Law Journal, there was an article on this very question. Unfortunately, it was written in the context of point counterpoint, with one attorney saying, oh, we can still do this by virtual, and the other attorney saying, no, we can't. And it appears to me, and without wanting to get too bogged down into the weeds of it, but it appears to me that the governor's executive order that authorized a municipal land use body to proceed virtually is one of the orders that has not been extended by the governor's office past the expiration of the date of emergency. So it appears to me that the better practice is going to be, after the conclusion of the state of emergency, that we should not be conducting our meetings virtually. I'm prepared to be persuaded otherwise if somebody can cite me some authority. But right now, my inclination is that we're supposed to be proceeding in person. Not tonight, but after, I guess it's what, July 4th.
Sarah, Mayor, what's the borough's outlook on this?
Right. Thanks for asking that, Kathy. So it's my understanding that the mayor and council is treated differently than the planning board when it comes to these
Okay.
matters. Essentially, before the pandemic, mayor and councils could meet virtually where planning boards couldn't. And then during the pandemic, obviously both could. And then now it goes back to pre-pandemic standards. So it's something I anticipate bringing up with the Borough Council tomorrow night at our meeting to discuss a date of going back to in-person meetings.
Okay. Okay. I just didn't know if the borough had something that, but it
No.
seems, based upon what you said, we're different.
Right. And, on my own perspective, as far as Borough Hall and safety, I welcome the planning board back.
I have a question.
Yeah. Michael.
Would we be, would it be okay to take a vote to see who wants to come back?
Well, it's not a matter of wants, but it's a matter of who is available to come back on the 28th.
Okay, well, put it in the record, I am.
Okay, then that's what I'm going to get to. Adele,
Okay.
if you would you take a roll call of who will be available to attend and who will not be available to attend on the July 28th meeting?
Mayor Tedisco,
I will be able to.
Ken Capobianco,
What?
Oh, Ken, you're muted.
Yes,
Ken, you're muted.
Okay. What did you say?
I am available.
Okay.
Councilman Graham,
Yes.
Chair Greet,
I can attend, yes.
Kathy Villaggio,
Yes, I can attend.
William Niersted,
Yes, I can attend.
Paul Tarantino,
Yes.
Steve Napolitano.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Mike Vina
Yes, I'll be there.
and Stephanie Bianco.
I'm not really sure at this time. Can I give you an answer at another time? I wasn't
Sure.
expecting this. Sorry.
That's okay. I'll put you down as a maybe.
Thank you.
Adele, Rich McCormick told me he was a yes earlier today when I spoke with him.
Okay.
And Victor, what about you? Victor?
Hold on. Yeah, I'll be ready.
Okay.
And Don?
Yeah.
Okay, and Adele, that's a no for you.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. So yeah, we'll be able to be in attendance then on the 28th. We have a quorum.
All right, but don't we have a different application, or one of the different applications?
Well, we have to see what happens, what transpires tonight.
Well, if you're referring to Russo, Adele, is that on the agenda yet?
No, it's not been officially scheduled.
Okay.
Okay, with that, I guess we can proceed with the application then.
Thank you,
Chairman,
Mr.
I
Chair.
have one question.
Yes.
So what is the format going forward for this application? And maybe Mr. Flannery can
And who's speaking? I
explain.
don't-
Are we going to
Okay.
talk about each building in full, or are we going to talk about both buildings simultaneously?
Mr. Tarantino, the idea was we would have our engineer testify, provide basic testimony regarding the site, the locations of the buildings. Then we would have the architects testify. We have an architect for the multifamily development as well as an architect for the self-storage building. So that each architect testify, talk about each of those buildings, and then answer questions.
Okay. Anyone else have a question pertaining to the timing?
Thank you.
If not, let's go forward with the application.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to call Michael Dipple, PE, our civil engineering witness. I'd like to have him sworn and qualified.
Okay. Mr. Dipple, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give before this board to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state and spell your name and give your address.
Sure, it's Michael Dipple, D-I-P-P-L-E. My professional address is 60 Grand Avenue in Englewood, New Jersey. I'm employed by L2A Land Design, LLC.
Your
Thank you.
witness, counsel.
Mr. Dipple, if you could just briefly for the board describe your education, experience, licensure, and other qualifications as an expert in civil engineering.
Sure, I'm a professional engineer in the state of New Jersey and the state of New York. I have a Bachelor of Science from Rutgers University in civil engineering. I've been at this profession for 30 years. I've been accepted by hundreds of boards throughout the state, some very close to you, Cranford, Westfield, Watchung, Union. And these plans were prepared under my direction, and my license is still in good standing.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend to the board that Mr. Dipple be accepted as an expert in the field of engineering.
So be it. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dipple, if you could just briefly describe, and I believe you have exhibits to present as well, the existing conditions and the proposed site layout of the development.
Okay. I'm gonna start. I'm gonna share my screen. I need permission from the host. I'm sorry.
Livia?
I'm doing it now. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Just looking for you. Sorry. Give me a second. There you are. More.
I'm still disabled.
Okay, go ahead.
Let me try. Oh, there you go. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna describe. I'm going to start with this rendering. It's entitled Overall Site Plan. It's sheet C05 of our plan set, but we added the color just for testimony, and we added the landscaping from a different sheet. But it's a good sheet because it has all the zoning on it. You can see the whole property. So
this will be exhibit A1.
Okay. All right. So A1 is overall. Okay. So the site is at 75 North Avenue. As you know, it's the old Garwood paperboard site. It had a lot of pavement and asphalt and concrete and a few buildings. And if you go out there today, of course, all that is gone. It is just on the south side of North Avenue, between North Avenue and the transit railway line. It's on the north end of your borough, closest to Cranford. So there's like I said, there's really nothing on the site. It's kind of an elongated site, generally from east to west. So on this plan, I'm going to consider the top of the plan north and the bottom south, the right east and the left west. And there's a north arrow in the lower right-hand corner of the page. So if we look at the site, we have two proposed buildings, and they are in that tan color. So the one on the left is a mixed-use residential building. It would consist of 124 residential units. Access is only from North Avenue on the west side of the site and just to the east of the building, close to where the road bends slightly. And then, of course, to the bottom is the transit railway line. The green, of course, is the landscaping. So you can see that if you consider the existing property as nearly 100% impervious, you can see that we're adding a fair amount of green space to the property around the proposed building. This proposed building is consistent with the Garwood Paperboard Redevelopment Plan Ordinance, and it is shown as an exhibit within that ordinance. So I'm getting a note here. I'm sorry. Okay. Sorry, something came up on Ring Central there. To the right then would be a proposed self-storage building on the east side of the site. There is one access point proposed to North Avenue with a small parking lot, and then a drive aisle which actually continues through the building and then comes back on the west side of the site and links up with the on-site parking lot just to the east of our property, and then access could be through North Avenue again. So that's really the general layout of the property. Like I said, 124 residential units. There would also be a Garwood Community Center in the front and some amenities. And of course, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. As part of the redevelopment plan, our proposed building preserves what is commonly referred to as the castle in the front. And that is shown here in the front, which just juts out slightly toward North Avenue. Okay. With that being said, I know we're, per the initial discussion, I think our team has decided to just introduce where we stand with compliance on this, and maybe reserve some things like grading and drainage, lighting and landscaping for what looks like the next meeting. So right. I'm going to start, if I'm correct, Mr. Flannery. But
that's correct,
yeah.
Mr. Jeppel.
Okay, so I'm going to start with the left side or the west side of the site, where we are proposing a right-in, right-out driveway only to a parking lot immediately to the west of the proposed building. That parking lot has 43 proposed parking spaces, and you will see something somewhat unique is we have 18 of them are what are called tandem spaces. So if you have a residential apartment in this building, you're given 2 parking spaces. One would be in front of the other, and that's very common in apartments. Others we have done, not only for this client, but also other areas or other developments in the area. This is a very common configuration of parking, and it works well. It's very consistent with a driveway. It might be at a residential single-family home where you have to pull one car out of the driveway maybe to get to the other one, or you do some planning between drivers or spouses or whatever. So we have a 43-car parking lot to the west. Then you have a driveway that goes underneath the building. Inside or underneath on the ground floor of the building, there would be 212 garage spaces. And that's shown right here. I think I failed to mention this is a 4-story building. So the ground floor and then 3 floors above. And you're going to hear a lot more about that from the project architect. So underneath the building, you have 212. You have a series of tandem parking spaces. There are actually 113 of the spaces are behind another space. So that would be the same configuration that I described outdoor, just underneath the building. To the right, you would have from the access point and on the east side of the residential building, that is a full movement driveway. So that is not restricted by the right in, right out. I should say that the team has met with representatives from the New Jersey Department of Transportation because this is New Jersey State Highway Route 28, and it would be under their jurisdiction. So we did meet with representatives, and I think we came to some agreement regarding the configuration of the driveways. So that driveway leads to a parking lot consisting of 27 parking spaces. None of those are tandem parking spaces. And then, of course, you have access underneath the proposed building in the same fashion from that side also. All right. And then here is the, what we call building, I think in the letters, it's called Lot B or Lot 6.02, which is the self-storage building. And again, I think I described that in some detail, but you're going to hear more about it from the project architect. You have a 4-story storage building, 109,000, a little bit more gross floor area. You have a 9-car parking lot with an ingress driveway only. So all the way to the east, you would only have ingress. You would have the opportunity for the 9 parking spaces. And then, as I described, you could go through the building underneath. You have an opportunity for a few more parking spaces on your right, and then continue on, and you could exit through the middle driveway. So that being said, I can use some of that testimony I gave to go over the zoning table. Unless, Mr. Flannery, do you think I missed anything, or do you want me to focus on
No,
anything else?
I just 2 questions. One, I believe there are some spaces reserved for Borough of Garwood's use, correct, on the site?
That's correct, yes. I'm going to get to, you're absolutely correct, and I have a parking table, and I do have some discussion because I'm sure the tandem spaces are going to bring up a few questions and how it all works and whether or not we have adequate supply. So that's correct.
Okay, let's go through the tables then.
Okay, so I'm going to focus on zoning table for lot 6.01 or lot A, as it's described in the redevelopment ordinance. And I'm going to show compliance. And you can see where on the right, where we have the column variance, it's filled with a lot of no's because this part of the development is fully compliant from a bulk standpoint. So we have minimum lot area, width, depth, height, building height. Oh, I should, yes, I'm sorry. Building coverage, impervious lot coverage, setbacks, and those types of bulk standards, and we meet all of those standards. As I move down to the parking table, we have on this property, we are proposing 28 one-bedroom units, 92 two-bedroom units, and 4 three-bedroom units. And your parking count is, your parking requirement is consistent with the residential site improvement standards, or RSIS. And that comes to a total of 243 parking spaces required for the residential. My apologies, I didn't have it calculated here. It's kind of done all together, but there was 243 total for the residential. Then we have a number of parking spaces, off-street parking spaces per the redevelopment ordinance that are dedicated to the Garwood Community Center. It gives a range, 24 to 27. So in our table, we're saying 24 for compliance, but I'll talk a little bit more about that. So our total required parking spaces are 270, and we have 282 parking spaces on Lot A, and therefore we are in conformance with your parking standard. So before I move on to Lot B, or Building B, I think I should probably unwrap that a little bit and discuss how that works. So if you can follow along with the 124 residential parking spaces, as I mentioned, there were 113 tandem spaces. So the way that functions, of course, is there will be 226 parking spaces which are absolutely reserved for the residential units because they're in that tandem configuration. I can't have someone from the general public parking in the behind the tandem space or behind in the back of the tandem spaces, because of course it just wouldn't function. So 226 spaces are for the residential. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just getting a note from a colleague here. So we'll stick with these numbers for now. And then, so that would leave a total, there's 282, that would leave 56 total parking spaces that are still to be claimed. So with that, I have still 11 more units that need to be claimed. So that would say 22 parking spaces from the 56. And then if I take 24 from the community center, I'm left with 10 spaces which are completely unclaimed on this site. So essentially the way it functions, we have 10 parking spaces which are not encumbered by the tandem configuration, which are unclaimed and are in excess of what is required and the functionality. So I think there was some conversation about Uber Eats and Amazon Prime and all these different things. So I think we're gonna maybe talk about that more as this whole process continues, but I should say, while I'm doing parking, that we have right now, the way I see it, 10 additional parking spaces, and they could be located here on the west side of the site, where we have 7 parking spaces. These are the ones that are not tandem, that could not be claimed, a few of those. And of course, on the east side of the site, where I have the 27 car parking lot, again, none of those are tandem, though some of those could be the additional spaces. I think we're going to talk about that more. Perhaps there's ways to ensure that we have good drop-off delivery for, you know, these DoorDash, Uber Eats, which are very common now, especially, you know, during the pandemic. And of course, the upsurge of home delivery through Amazon Prime. But I think we accommodated very well. So that being said, that is the left side of my plan. The west side with the residential, that is the zoning compliance. When it comes to lot 6.02 or lot B, that is the self-storage side of the development. I have another compliance table here. And that compliance table shows mostly no's, but a couple of yeses. So we are compliant with lot area and lot width and lot depth. We're compliant. I should say that we did have a change with the building height, and I'm going to let the architect describe that in terms of a C variance for building height. But that would be the project architect coming up soon. We do require a variance for maximum gross floor area, where the redevelopment ordinance calls that 101,000 square feet. Our proposed building is 109,239 square feet. The maximum building footprint, 28,000. We're just above that at 28,851 square feet. And that is also a variance. The remainder of it, lot coverage, front yard setbacks, rear sides, combined sides and whatnot, are all compliant. So we are not seeking any other variances that I'm aware of than the ones that we discussed, and I believe that is consistent with Mr. Venegra's letter. I didn't describe signage. That's not on my plans. You will hear more from the architect.
That's correct.
But those are the other 2 variances that that were called out. Oh, I should say, back on lot A, there was a variance that was called out by Mr. Venegra for electric car charging stations, and we are proposing those. So we are removing that variance from the list. It's not shown on my plan, but we are eliminating the need for that variance, and that would be on a subsequent revision of the plans. Okay, so I can go then to parking, and this is a little simpler. Self-storage at that size requires 19 parking spaces. We do have the 19 parking spaces, and loading docks are subject to planning board approval, and we're going to call those 10 flex spaces. And all of those spaces are located. Here are the 9, and here are the 10. And that's the way it functions. So that parking table is a little easier to address. And we do not require variances for parking on lot B or 6.02. I did include a coverage table. We did see the comment from Mr. Vinegra regarding coverage. And I think it's important for me to just point that out, because as we get into stormwater management discussion and testimony, I think it will be important. Essentially, when we break it all down between building and pavement and things like that, we end up with about 36,826 square feet of new pervious surface. So if you remember my opening discussion about existing versus proposed, where if you look at an aerial, and there's a very good aerial in the redevelopment plan itself, shows an aerial of the site before this plan was developed and before significant demolition took place on the property, you can see, and that appears on page 3 of the redevelopment plan, you can see the extent of the development that was on the site when it was the paperboard factory under pre-development conditions. So we are decreasing the impervious coverage by a significant amount, probably close to 20%, because the site is only 4.56 acres, and that's approaching an acre of, it's just shy of an acre of new grass and landscaping. So that's the other feature on this plan. That being said, and with the other items of my engineering plans, Mr. Flannery, I guess, is there anything else you'd like me to cover regarding the proposed plan?
Just really quickly, on the building footprint variance, there's a covered drive aisle in the storage building, correct? If we were to remove that, we'd essentially be conforming. That's the reason for the variance, essentially.
No question, and that is here. I think I've described that. So this is the access through and back, and if you were to eliminate that, yes, you would eliminate at least 8,239, and you would be compliant with 101,000 that the ordinance describes.
But to be clear, we're still asking for the variance. We think it's an important feature, but we just wanted to call that out to the board.
That's correct.
And just to recap, in terms of all the provisions of the redevelopment plan, we're in full conformance with all the zoning requirements, except for those few variances that you noted, the footprint, gross floor area, and the signage variances, as well as the potential building height variance.
Yeah, that's correct. We have no variances now with the car park, with the electric charging stations on lot A, so there are no variances. And then, yes, on lot B, it would be height, floor area, footprint, and then we haven't discussed signage yet. So it's 3 variances here on lot B and signage, and that would be the only variances we'd be looking for.
All right, and the architects will discuss those variances in a little more detail later on. I think those are all the direct questions I have of Mr. Dipple at this time. If the board members or its consultants have any questions, we'd welcome them at this time.
Yeah, I have a question to start it off. On the parking area on the left-hand side, which would be the west side, you have the tandems, but you also have a drive-in, drive-out. So if someone is blocking someone else in, or if it's an apartment complex and 2 cars have to be moved, that means ultimately that drive-in and drive-out area is going to be backed up, and that's going to back directly up into Route 28. And if in conjunction with that, if someone's not prepared at the time and they have to leave their car idling in the middle of the roadway so that someone else can come down with the keys for the second car to pull out. That just to me is just a real problematic area for both Route 28 through traffic and also within that parking area itself.
I think I can offer two things, Mr. Chairman. I think that, well, first of all, we're going to have traffic testimony coming up. So not tonight, of course, but our traffic engineer will be available and can address the number of trips and perhaps the times that could occur, maybe the infrequency that could occur, or at least she can address that. I understand the concern. I think in my experience with these, it does happen from time to time that perhaps the coordination wasn't correct, and perhaps someone has to go out and move a car so the other car can back out. But it's a very short amount of time. And I think it's they can position a car in the drive aisle just momentarily until that maneuver, then pull back in. So I think it's a short amount of time. I think the conflicts there would be minimized. But I think we can address that as a comment well noted for prior testimony from our traffic engineer.
My second question would be, is the through traffic underneath the building, is that going to be a gated entrance and exit or not?
No, I don't believe so. The team can correct me otherwise, but I don't believe so. I think
you could have somebody from the general public who doesn't own an apartment there, or is visiting or whatever, take up some spaces, dedicated spaces that were not for that person, basically.
I think it could happen. I think it's possible that an errant vehicle would come in and start using the spaces, but I think they would know. I think they would know pretty quick. I think if you come in and you see that same car taking your spots or something, and it's really, the parking lot is advantageous for someone coming to this building. So residential site improvement standards contemplate half a space per unit for a guest. So where 1.8 or 2 or 2.1 spaces are required depending on the size of the unit, that includes half a space for a guest. So in general, I think what you would see is a much lower parking need. And we've designed buildings at 1.2 compared to where where if they're close to public transportation or maybe in a downtown setting, 1.6, even in a very suburban area. So I think you would have a lot of spaces that would be open, and then you have a family that might even have a 2-bedroom that has 1 car. It's probably more so now with that people have learned to work from home. But again, we can provide more testimony in that, but I think your original question was, would it be gated? And my response is no, I don't believe so.
Okay, and thirdly, and then I'll have a lot more questions down the line, but I'll just make it short for myself. How did you arrive at the two unit charging station for 124 units, knowing that electric vehicles are the hot commodity right now and only will become hotter and hotter? Are you open to increasing that number at all?
Possibly. I only picked out 2 because that's what's required by ordinance. And I just described, we haven't designed it, we haven't located them, but I just said that we would comply with that. So I agree with you 100%. And I'm on board with the electric vehicles. I just got one myself, and I think that there will be a need for more as the demand increases. But I think maybe we can. It looks like we're going to revise these plans. Maybe we can give that some more thought and then come back.
I would look at more like 5 to 10, maybe.
I have
with
a
that,
question.
I'm sure I'll have a lot more questions as we go along, and I know I do. But I'll ask anyone else of the board if they have any questions.
Yes, I have a question.
Mike, you know what? I would appreciate when people ask about a question or have a question, just say your name, because everybody can't see everybody on the screen, and we just can go by voice sometimes.
Mike Vina. I have a question. These two areas in front of the parking along South Avenue, the large areas?
In front of this grass area, sir?
No, in the orange or the
Okay.
tan. All right, these two large areas coming from the grass into the building in front of the parking area. What are those two areas? Because I don't have a plan or dimensions in front of me.
I think we're talking about the front of the building where the
Yes.
the castle structure.
Okay.
Well, I know where the castle
Oh, I'm
structure
sorry.
is. To
In
the
the
east,
building?
to the west of the castle structure.
So we haven't gotten into architecture yet, but I can tell you, because I have it right here in front of me, the left side is amenity space and the right side is the Garwood Community Center. But I think the architect will give much more testimony. And the center is the lobby. But you're gonna see pictures and you'll hear more from the architect.
That's correct. We'll have architecture testimony explaining those
So
spaces
all
in
of
greater
the
detail.
parking area is behind those structures.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, it's Councilman Graham.
Yes.
I have a question about the tandem parking. It can't escape anybody that 1.5 spots in a tandem situation is either 2 or 1. And 1.8 is either 2 or 1. So if you have a tandem situation and only have 1 car, you're using 2 spots regardless. So, you know, I don't see how tandem is the answer to anything less than 2, you know, as a number. You know, the 1.5 would work if you had, say, another 50 or 70 single spots, but 2 is 2.
No, I agree. I'm not following the 1.5. I'm sorry. The 1.5 spaces.
Well, you mentioned 1.5 as a number, you know, which I kind of grabbed on because, you know, when it comes to parking spaces and no such thing, unless you have a motorcycle, I guess,
Okay.
as 1.5 cars. But, you know, I just don't know how the tandem would work even for a 1-car, 2-bedroom situation. You know, these people would still basically own 2 spots.
Okay. I'm sorry, so I may have confused the issue a little bit, and I was describing some of the parking ratios that I have seen in the past, and that's where I got the 1.5. We have designed large facilities to function at 1.2 spaces or 1.6. You know, in Hoboken, it's 1-to-1, and you can imagine why, right? It's very expensive, very difficult, and to keep a car, and you know. So I guess that's what I was referring to, not actually giving people 1.5, but just doing it. So I think I was making the point that it was adequately parked, and what you would see, I think, in reality, would be a fair number of open spaces. Because you have, everybody is assumed to have 2 vehicles, and we're parking at least 2 vehicles for everyone on the site. So that's where I said there were 113 tandems, and therefore there were 226 of the spaces which are attributable to residential. So that was 113 units. You have 124 units proposed, so you still had 11 units I needed to account for. So I found those 11 spaces out here on the elsewhere, whether they were singles or tandems or whatever they were. And I still show that we have adequate parking. I still show that community center parking, residential parking, we still have 10 additional parking spaces. So how would they function? I guess if you do live in it, you have 1 car, you have a space for a guest. And that's a pretty valuable commodity. If you have 2 cars, you have that, and you still have the extra guest spaces on the site throughout. So that's why we have some of the singles, you know, for additional guest spaces. So we feel that it works itself out. And again, this is a pretty common configuration. We just did this configuration in Cranford, and that's up and running. So,
Mr. Chairman, it's Mayor Tedisco. I have a couple questions. One is, and this might help in follow up to Councilman Graham because I do want to do some math. My question is, do you intend to mark some of the single spaces as visitor only?
it's possible. I don't think we really got there so far. You know, it's possible, the delivery, those kind of things. We could consider that. I think, like I said, we're coming back, so some of these considerations we could, you know,
Okay.
we could get some.
An easy question, and then I'll go to a more difficult one. Easy one is, would you encourage via literature to your residents that when they have visitors, they do use their own parking spaces if possible?
Yeah, I think a lot of that happens in the leasing, and you're absolutely correct. There's kind of a little instruction on how you use your parking spaces now that you have them, and I think that's very common. So.
Okay. And then for a bit more of a challenging question, I just am really trying to wrap my head around it, just as I believe Councilman Graham is, because I've been taking notes on these numbers. So the way I read it is you mentioned the 113 tandem spaces and then another 11 tandem spaces. So that gives you the 124, which is 124 units. So that's essentially times 2.
Yes.
That works very well for the 1-bedroom and the 2-bedroom units. The only snafu that I could see would be technically earmarking 2.1 spaces for a 3-bedroom. And that's where it could interfere. I could see it overlapping or spilling into that 10 unclaimed parking spaces.
Yeah.
And I'd like personally to see that most of the 10, if not all of the 10, could be for visitors or deliveries, because of course we know those will be needed too.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's going to be one of those situations where if you looked at this, I can add some testimony, and I think our traffic engineer is probably best at this, but I can add a little bit to it. And that there's also, you know, the deliveries are happening at different times of the day, you know, some on Saturday, some on Sunday, but mostly during the busiest time is during the week when everyone else is working. So you do have some shared parking possibilities here where you won't have everybody home all the time during the day when the deliveries come. But I think what you were getting at is, could there be a 3-bedroom unit that has 3 cars? Because we ticked over the 2 spaces.
Right.
And I think what happens is management really needs to plan this. You know, they get these spaces and say, look, I'm a 1-car family. I have a 1-bedroom. I live by myself. I have 1 vehicle. So they get the 1. They don't throw them into the 2 tandems, so that we can keep those available. So if a 3-car household comes in to even a 2-bedroom unit or a 3-bedroom unit, but happens to be a 3-car household, then there's some planning that takes place. You get a tandem. You also get a single. So now you've kind of very efficiently handled those 2 families. And as it grows, you know, it's all about planning. So.
Thank you. I appreciate those answers.
Chairman, it's Paul Tarantino.
Yeah, Paul.
The 24 spots that are designated for the community center, maybe I missed this, or I don't know if it was discussed. Where are those allocated?
So they're not really allocated yet. They're here, they're in the plan. So, you know, we really have a lot, you know, we have a lot of extra spaces, but of course, if they want, you know, if the ordinance requires the 24, 27, whatever it requires the range, I just went with the 24, but they would be somewhere on site, and that would have to be worked out. You know, one thing I feel, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, it looks like the left side, you've got tandem parking spots, and that won't work for a community center. The middle parking lot between the storage facility and the apartment building looks like it's got 24 to 27 parking spots there. And that's the side that's closest to the community center. I don't know why that hasn't been designated as the parking for the community center.
Well, it could be. I can speak to my client and we can.
Yeah, we're still finalizing that, but I think, yeah, it's definitely possible that we'd have them all on the one side for the community center.
And I think that's where we're going. I mean, it makes sense. The community center is on the right side of the development. And therefore, having the parking at that area would be advantageous. You know, one thing I forgot to mention is we also are proposing 10 on-street parking spaces on North Avenue. I didn't bring that in because I was doing the zoning, but this plan does include a relocated bus stop and 10 parking spaces along North Avenue. So we've discussed this with the DOT and of course, that I just want to point that out. That's not in the calculations anywhere. Those are just extra. The only thing I deal with is on-site, but I just want to point out that we are also proposing, actually it's 10 on this side and 3 on the opposite side. So there are additional 13 striped parking spaces that we're hopeful, you know, would be accommodated on North Avenue.
Yeah,
Well, those cars are all going to have to be moved in a snow emergency.
It's possible.
I don't like that. I don't like that idea at all.
I do have a question. This is Chair Steve Greed. You talked briefly about a traffic study. I know you submitted a traffic statement. That's different than a traffic study, correct?
I'm not the traffic engineer, but there is kind of a difference. I don't know if it's an official difference, but the traffic engineer did submit some type of study.
Okay, so are we going to get an updated traffic study? Because you mentioned times and you know, a frequency of travel, and this document had no times whatsoever and no frequencies.
I was implying to just testimony from the traffic engineer on her, you know, experience and knowledge. I don't know if we're planning to resubmit.
Mr. Chair, I can step in on this. I believe that the traffic statement will be sufficient, Mr. Chairman. We comply with the zoning in that regard, and we will have testimony supplementing that.
Okay.
So, Ken Capobianco, I have a question. I see a lot of parking spaces. I see a lot of potential for people that need assistance. And I don't see any real handicap wide parking spaces for people that have a van or that need assistance getting a walker in and out of their car while they're trying to do what they have to do. What are you going to do for that?
We do, actually. We have one here, which is van accessible over on the left side. And that's based on the.
And that's for a resident?
That is, ADA spaces deal with the size of the parking lot. So we distribute them the best way we can based upon the total number of spaces provided. So we have one, we thought one was advantageous there. We have 6 in the middle. So those are all underneath. So you can maybe, you know, and there are 2 van accessible spaces there, and then 2 that are not van accessible. And then you have 1 more over here. So we just distributed it the best way we thought possible, and I think that works well. But
Well, I'm not sure, because if people are using the community center and you have elderly people going there that are handicapped, are the under building parking spaces reserved for residents, or is it simply a handicap? Is that going to be an assigned spot to a handicapped resident, or is it going to be public handicap parking available to anyone who goes there?
Well, it hasn't really, we haven't really worked it out to that point, but it depends on if there are people who live here that need handicap accessibility or need those. So it's still possible that we move some of the ADA spaces around a little bit if the board feels that way. But just in terms of I'm just saying, sir, in terms of the distribution, I think looking at this, it's a pretty standard distribution where the 212 is served by the most. The 43, on the left side is served by a smaller amount and on the right side. But it's still open for discussion, I'm sure.
We'll have additional testimony from our traffic expert on that issue, Mr. Capobianco.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Niersted? Steve? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the testimony. I apologize if I jump around a little bit. I have notes like on various pages and various sheets. First, Victor, I assume you're still there. Statement was made that there are no other variances besides the couple for the storage building. Obviously, your report indicated more. Do you concur with what Mr. Dipple has said regarding the
Well, he's testifying that, again, the parking, the electric parking stations.
Right, I'll come to that in a second. What about the other, the lot coverage, the height, impervious coverage, the bulk?
Yeah, he testified to the, they do have a planner, Bill.
Yes.
So the planner will be testifying to those variances. So let the planner handle the variances.
Our architect will also be speaking to some of those variances as well. So.
Okay. All right. Mr. Dibble, first off, I want to thank you for the separated driveway ingress egress on the west side of the project. Having the island in the middle is a big asset. And so I appreciate you doing that. Second, I don't doubt for a minute that you've spoken to NJDOT about the ingress and egress, and I really like the ingress only on the east. I kind of like it to be an egress only, but it's okay the way you have it. But I really wonder why, after reading the police report, and I know part of this goes to the traffic, I really wonder why DOT is preferring an ingress egress at the middle drive, where that actually has much less site visibility, according to the police department, than the one in the west. So I would appreciate if you, in your conversations with NJDOT, could discuss that a little bit and provide some comments back to us as to why they prefer an ingress egress in the middle, where the site visibility is reduced less than it is over on the western side.
I'm going to respectfully request that we put that on the traffic engineer, because
Understood.
the discussion.
Because you brought up DOT and that you've spoken.
No, I agree 100%. It's just that Ms. Dolan has been spearheading that effort with the DOT. And
No problem. Mr. Flannery, appreciate hearing that and coming back later. Second,
Yes.
I could ask lots of questions about the parking, but I think Mr. Dipple has really hit it, Mr. Flannery. You guys need a parking management plan. You really need to provide to us how these spaces are being divvied out, what's being reserved, as Mr. Capo, I'm going to say Ken, as Ken stated, I knew I was going to say that wrong. The spaces that are for the community center, the spaces that are strictly for the storage facility. And I really am lost. I've done the numbers like 3 different ways. The number of tandem spaces, and I am not, I'll say straightforward, I'm not opposed to tandem spaces. What I'm curious about is, with 124 units, I would think that there would be 124 tandem spaces, as I believe Mr. Dipple was trying to get to. I can't see it. And that's why I'm not even going to ask the question, other than to say, if you can provide a parking management plan because I came up with only 95 tandem spaces under the building, and you add the ones you have outside. I'm not really at that 111 figure you were at. It's probably my math. Never was my best subject, but Mr. Flannery, we really appreciate the submission of a parking management plan indicating how management is going to work this out with the tenants. They're going to be designated spaces. As was indicated earlier, what are guest spaces? I personally, and everybody in the board knows, you know, I'm not a fan of parking. I think you have way too much parking, and I would actually be in favor of reducing some of the parking. But I would like to see, you know, as Mr. Tarantino mentioned, you know, the 1.8, the 2.1, I think 2.8 and the 3.1 comes down to two per unit. If we can try to have 2 per unit with tandem spaces, I think that would really be good. Mr. Dipple, you didn't mention anything about the trash bins, but I assume that's within your purview?
It is, it's partially mine, partially the architect.
Right, all right. I don't like them.
Yeah.
I don't like them. The reason I don't like them is because they're actually in the traffic aisle. What I mean by that is the garbage truck is going to have to pull into the traffic aisle, stop, get the garbage in and out, and then continue. You know, and everybody says that they're going to pick up garbage at 5 a.m., but I don't think the residents would like that. And I'm not sure, and this is an architect question, so I'm not asking you to view now, but you know, that means you have to design this drive-through to accommodate the garbage trucks. And I think what you need in addition to a parking management plan is a waste management plan. As this, you have three dumpster areas. I don't know, I have no idea if that's big enough for 124 units. I really would appreciate, and we have gotten it before, whatever contractor you're going to utilize, that they indicate how many dumpsters you need, what size those dumpsters are, and how often that pickup is.
Yes.
The other reason I don't like them is they're not screened. If you come in on the western side, you pull into that driveway and you look to your left, the first thing you see is a dumpster. This is too nice a building and too big a project in Garwood to have the first sight you see the dumpster. So you brought it up perfectly. You know, when you come down there, if I'm not so sure I want to do this, but even if you were to pull on the other side of the drive-through, you could actually totally screen it so that it's not visible. And the only time it would be visible is when it wouldn't be visible, period, amen. Like I said, I'm not so sure I want to bring it over to the other side of the drive, more to the north rather than the south of that drive. But I put that out to you as I try to resolve issues when I raise them. And you could totally screen it if you were to put it on the other side.
And Bill, briefly on that subject, I was going to bring it up. Both prior redevelopment projects in the borough of Garwood have compactors and internal garbage. And I think I mentioned this to the developer at the beginning of the project. Every redevelopment we've done to date, we have interior garbage, so we don't have a rodent problem, and we have compactors. Every developer has been doing that. It's not, you know, I'd like to see this plan do the same.
And I'll concur with Victor.
Because that, you know, that garbage is as far away from the elevators as you can get, and it can become a rodent issue. They can do a internal room for internal garbage.
I think you're going to hear a lot more about trash collection. I appreciate the comments. I think these are auxiliary trash enclosures, but we will, you'll hear more about garbage collection.
All right.
Right.
And as everyone else knows, we all keep saying trash, but there's another component, you know, recycle.
Right.
Yeah, it's a very small area, Bill, I think, for the amount of apartments. That's where compactor comes into play.
Right. I'd like to hear about, Victor, you know me, and everybody's talking about garbage. I just want to make sure we address recycling too.
And I think there should be some room, so.
Okay.
Right. To Mr. Neerstedt's points, I just want, I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Just want 3 points. One, the architect will explain trash recycling process in a little more detail. 2, we will look into the parking management and waste and recycling management issues that Mr. Neerstedt had mentioned for the next hearing. And then third, I just want to correct something. The 24 or 27 town spaces will in fact, I just received confirmation from my client, will in fact be located to the right in that parking area. So just want to clarify for the record that those will be town designated spaces.
What do you mean by the right? The east side?
Between the storage building
Okay.
and the multifamily building. Right.
Okay.
Mr. Flannery, I appreciate that. Obviously, Mr. Dipple has indicated that you'll be coming back with a revised plan. So, you know, if you can
Correct.
have a sheet showing that would be great.
Put a note or something to that effect. Yes.
Hang on a second. No mention has been made of the public right-of-way. And I see on the plan, basically what you're proposing is brick pavers there. Mr. Venegro, I don't know if you've gotten into this yet. Sidewalks, curbs, what's the status of that?
Let the architect, let the engineer testify.
Oh, we are, yes, we are proposing what we feel is consistent with Garwood streetscape. So we are proposing to put down the brick liner on between the curb and the sidewalk, and then of course the street trees, lights, and there are some comments, I believe, Mr. Venegro, regarding furniture and things
Right.
like that we can address.
Right, I wasn't going to get in. He did make a lot, and I agree with them all. And I won't get into those now. I'll hold off. But are we talking about new sidewalks, new curbs, or keeping it? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. I didn't hear the answer.
Oh, yes, yes, we are.
New curbing, new sidewalks. Great. Thank you very much. Is there a problem if we reduce the paved depth of the parking spaces from 18 to 16, but still provide the 2-foot overhang? A lot of municipalities do provide for that, and unless there's an issue here, I would like to do that if possible, to reduce the amount of pavement on site. I'm sure you received, and I'm not going to get into stormwater now, but I'm sure that you saw Cranford's comments to us. Any way we can reduce impervious pavement and increase some stormwater capacity would be appreciated.
Bill, there is a problem with, you can do a percentage 16. I do drive at times, I have a van, and my van is over 18 feet long. Pickup trucks are still over 16, so.
Well,
you can do a percentage.
My Prius has no problem.
But I also drive a Subaru, which is very, very small, so I can fit my Subaru in the back of my van. But you can maybe decrease the size of the, one of the recommendations I have is to eliminate the tandem on the left-hand side, the outdoor tandem, because then if someone's backing up their vehicles and leaving them in a traveled way, that would block the entrance to the entire property. And just to go over tandem briefly.
Well, hang on. Let me just finish. I'm almost done, then I'll give you the whole floor. I appreciate that. So, Mr. Diplo, if you can work with Victor to see what we can reduce where possible, I know I would appreciate that.
Of course. Yeah.
Hang on a second. All right, you've indicated you haven't located electric charging. Look forward to seeing where they're going. Mr. Flannery, would your client be open to giving the borough Title 39 allowance on the site? And the reason, for those who don't know, it allows the police to actually issue tickets for improper parking, what have you, on private property. Would your client be open to that?
I believe so, and we can discuss that when we have
All
the
right.
traffic engineering testimony.
That sounds great. Look forward to hearing that. This might be my last question, because I'm just trying to stick to parking and use. In looking at the overall site plan, that to give you a bias, okay, my background is landscape architecture, so anytime I can reduce some parking and increase open space, what have you, I'm going to try. The area to the left, let me rephrase that, southwest is actually the largest green space. If you can think about trying to do something there, residents can use that, appreciate it. And I know we talked about amenities, and your architect's going to get into that, but the 16-foot wide rear yard, great for a dog run. Maybe you can think about putting that in there. Other than that, Mr. Chairman, that's it in terms of my parking and engineering questions.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Anyone else from the board?
I do.
Okay, Kath.
I have a question. Kathy Velagio. Mr. Dipple, you mentioned, not to start, that this is a mixed use building?
Well, it's a mixed-use development, but yeah.
Okay, all right.
You could say it's mixed use. It has a community center, so there's no retail, but it's a community center, so I guess that counts.
Okay, all right. And I just wanted to make sure because, you know, what you meant by that. And the fire department sent an email.
Yes.
Is there anything on that list that is under the civil engineering part that you're the expert on?
Yes, and that would be number 8 of that, maybe number 7 and number 8, which just deals with fire hydrants and the size of the, I guess just the fire hydrants. The rest is a dry line, which would be the architect. So yeah, just number 8. And he's requesting a fire hydrant, I believe, at each of the entrances. He's requesting 3 at the entrances. So that's, we have no issue with that. 1 here, 1 in the middle, and 1 on the left. But I have to, the comment just came in not long ago, June 20th.
Okay.
So I got to assess where they are and see where they would be. But yes, we have no
Okay. I'm at the next meeting. You can be more specific then?
Sure.
That's
Okay.
correct.
All right, that's all I have. I'm at this time, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Anyone else from the board have questions?
I have just one more, and I'm not sure if Mr. Dipple or Flannery can answer this. I'm confused about the electric vehicle connection. Is there going to be 2 right now, or is there not going to be any?
No, there's going to be at least 2. I believe the chairman was looking for more, but the code requires 2. We inadvertently left them off the plan. We fully intended to comply. It was cited as a variance, but we're not requesting that variance. We will provide at a minimum 2.
Okay, now.
That's correct.
Can you answer whether or not there are more than 2 electric vehicles that people rent apartments that have more than that? What happens in that case? Is that not you or?
Yeah, I think I haven't really, you know, I think.
Because they're really taking off, so.
Yeah, I know. I think it's wise to put them in. I think we were talking about 10 possibly, you know, amongst our team, but I'm going to reserve that for later. But I hear what you're saying, both Mr. Chairman and you, sir. And I think that, look, it makes good business for our client to put them in if that's the way things are going and you can provide that. You know, I think it's only good business, and they're very simple. They're incredibly simple to install. So, you know,
are they that simple? Aren't they 440s?
I have one in my house.
8 or what? If you want to charge your car overnight, you have to have high power going into it.
You do. I wish I could tell you more about the one I have. I put one in my garage, and it works quite well. It charges my car in 4.5 to 5 hours. So.
Yeah, that's more than a 240. Yes. Okay, that's fine. I appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, anyone else?
Yeah, just sticking with the electric charging, I realize you're coming back, but when you come back, you know, there's 3-4 different types of electric charging. I don't pretend to be an expert, but, you know, some are for any car, some are only for Tesla, some are a fast start, some are, you know, not fast start. You can find those answers out at some point within the parking management plan. And also, you know, are these only to be utilized by residents of this facility? Or can anybody, you know, are you going to have anybody be allowed to use them?
I think we can try to provide some more of those answers as as we give it more thought, as we look to update the plan. Yeah.
That's right. We'll reevaluate internally and have some answers for you at the next hearing.
Thank you.
While you're on the electric charging, installing, I think eventually they should be able to have 10% of this parking lot should be capable of doing it. That doesn't mean to install the chargers, but to run the conduit or direct burial electric lines so that can be upgraded, so you're not ripping things up, brand new landscaping and brand new. Because, sales are already looking at 10% of vehicle sales are becoming electric.
Yeah.
So I could easily see 20 electric cars here by the time this building's completed in a year and a half. So I think that has to be looked at long and hard. Just because we wrote a redevelopment plan said a minimum of 2, it means a bare bones minimum of 2. And if you look at the trends of what people buying, like you testified as the engineer, you have one. My office is installing 2. We have 10% of our spaces are going to be electric in my office. And that won't be enough because I suspect to have 4 electric vehicles in my office by the end of the year. So that has to have a long, hard look.
Sure.
Because if you live here and you don't have a charging station at work, you're screwed. You can't buy an electric car. There's only, even if there's 10 spaces, you can't buy an electric. If you can't charge it here, where are you going to charge it? You're going to have to go to a fast charge station and wait 2 hours, so that has to be looked at.
I think I agree, Mr. Venega, and I think our client agrees, and I think we can put something together here that the board will see that we're taking this matter very seriously, and again, it's only good business here for this property owner to provide amenities that will be more attractive to tenants. So.
And just briefly, well, we can talk about it more in the future, but I work for a municipality that was the original tandem parking. I mean, I've seen tandem parking for 40 years, and we had to modify the ordinance to get rid of it. We've had physical fights. We've had people with problems to the point where we modified an ordinance that permitted tandem for over 40 years and eliminated tandem. I like it in certain circumstances, but near a driveway, I know people that will just leave their car running and take their sweet ass time moving cars around, and that will block for queuing problems in the front. We've looked at this situation. So under the building, it makes sense to have tandem, but I think in the surface lot, because of the potential to block the traveled way, I'd like to see the tandem omitted. It's just a personal opinion. I don't know how the board members feel, but again, I have experience with buildings for 40 years that had tandem, and we're getting rid of it.
Well, I think
it's coming back again. It's coming back around with some of this new development, but it's coming back in towns that never had problems with tandem parking. That's the funny thing about it. It does conserve space. It does conserve impervious coverage, but to make the entire complex tandem, I see a problem.
Okay, thank you. I have another question before I stop. This is the chair again, and we talked about the parking on Route 28, and there were 10 spaces, I believe you said. Will is that going to be addressed by the traffic study that's going to be presented at a later time or next meeting or whatever?
That'll be addressed by the traffic engineer, yes.
Okay, all right.
There won't be a new study submitted, but there'll be testimony regarding that.
Is there, and I'm asking the question, is there a reason why there might not be a new study presented?
We just believe that the traffic statement that was submitted is sufficient, that in combination with testimony.
Because I mean,
we can discuss
in the traffic statement that I read, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I read it incorrectly, but the original paperboard stated that it had more, it had more traffic in and out of that area significantly more than this entire unit or these entire units are going to generate. And is that what we're predicated on? Is that what this traffic study is predicated on?
I believe so, but I'd like to have the traffic engineer discuss those findings and present and answer questions from the board, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Anyone else from the board have any questions? Okay, at this time, I guess we don't have any questions of the civil engineer. And are you planning on presenting someone else tonight, or do you want to?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to present our architect, Mr. Avelino Martinez.
Okay.
If the board is okay with that.
Sure.
Could have him sworn.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, it's Don Fraser.
Don.
Do you intend to open up this witness's testimony to the public for questions?
We can, but I honestly thought that this was more of an informal presentation by the civil engineer as opposed to specific documentation. Am I correct or am I incorrect?
Well, I'm just going to say that before anybody's going to vote on this, any of the witnesses who testify, the public should have an opportunity to have questions of.
So with that being said, are you planning on bringing back the civil engineer at all in the future?
I am, Mr. Chairman, but I agree with Mr. Fraser. I think that this should be open to the public at some point. I was thinking maybe we'd get another witness in and then open up for all the witnesses, or
well, I'd rather, if we're going to do that, I would rather have the questions opened up to the public, general public, at this point in time for this specific witness. Then
that's fine.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, Mr. Chairman. That's our usual practice.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. Well, then in that case, Olivia, maybe you can open it up to the general public for specific questions of this civil engineer. And we're not talking about commentary. We're talking about specific questions that they may have for the civil engineer of this project.
All right. And this is Don Fraser again. And with respect to that, Mr. Chairman, this is something that, came up at the last hearing that we had in terms of the procedure of the public. Again, I want to emphasize to the members of the public that it's an opportunity for questions of Mr. Dipple, not an opportunity at this point to comment on the merits of the application one way or the other. And the second thing is, for members of the public, if you have questions for Mr. Dipple, when it's your turn and you're called upon, ask him whatever questions you want. But the concept of this is not that it's going to ping pong back and forth and that everybody from the public is going to get 2 or 3 or 4 chances to come back and ask more questions of Mr. Dipple. So during this time, if you have questions and you have 2 or 3 or 4 or however many, be prepared to go forward and do them rather than you're going to wait for another member of the public and then you're going to come back and do more.
Thank you, Don, for clarifying that. Okay, Livia, at this time, we'll open it up to the general public, but again, you'll only open it up to the one person speaking and mute everyone else from the public.
Okay. So how do you want to do this? Do people raise their hands, or how do you want to do that?
Well, do you have an indicator on your board at all that someone has a
I
question?
do. I don't see any raised hands or questions or any Q&A.
Right, well,
I don't believe we have that feature. That's something that Zoom has that I don't think Ring Central does. So Olivia, you could just open up all lines where it says public after their name.
Okay.
Or when in doubt, like I see an iPad, just open that in case that's a member of the public.
Got it. Looks like they have themselves muted.
Right, and that's possible too.
Yeah.
Basically, they get an invitation to their computer screen indicating that they can mute themselves again if they wish.
Okay. You know what, Mike, can you make me the host? Mr. Dipple, you still are the host.
Oh, I am.
That's why I couldn't, that's why I couldn't do it.
Okay. How do I do that?
So just click on your name,
My name.
go
on
to
the-
participants.
Okay. Hold on. I gotta bring that up.
That's
Oops.
okay. On the right-hand side of your mouse, you just right-click it and go to my name, which is moderator, Borough of Garwood.
Over here, right?
And you see little 3 dots,
I do. I say mute my
and then
own,
make me the host.
hide self-view.
I grabbed it. I'm good.
You're good.
All right.
Sorry.
Hi.
All right.
Just unmute. Okay. Allow participants to unmute. Okay, so folks are allowed to unmute themselves and start asking questions. There are 1, 2, 3, 4. There's only 5 public folks on. Does anybody have any questions? Does anybody need to unmute themselves? Just click on the 3 dots next to your name and I'll unmute you.
Okay, thank you.
so-
This is Don Fraser. I'm the board attorney. To the moderator, please don't mute me again, or if you mute me, unmute me, because I'll need at some point perhaps to jump in from time to time. But if we only have 5 members of the public, maybe the easiest way to do this is if we just call on each of the 5 members of the public and see if they want to participate or not. If we had
That's
some,
fine. Olivia,
if we
can
had
you?
some, if we had some large number, it might not work. But if we only have 5, why don't we do it that way?
Okay, so Peter Flannery is unmuted right now. Peter?
All right. That's the board. That's
Right,
the
and
applicant.
That's the board member?
Thank you.
Okay,
He's the applicant's
so
attorney.
I can't unmute these folks myself. I've asked them to unmute, but there's V to Berry.
Yeah, no questions. Thank you.
Okay, Randy Jones,
No questions.
Tony Giovanni,
That's
He
the
is
applicant's
He's the
representative.
okay, Susan Wasilewski.
No questions.
So we
Okay.
have,
Thank
who
you.
is
So-
the person that's coming up as iPad?
I don't know.
Can we unmute them to just make sure?
Just ask them to unmute. I've asked everyone to unmute already. I
That
can't.
could be a member of my team. I'm not sure.
Okay. And then I see we have John Bartolick on. I know he's a member of the public.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bartolick. And
Okay,
okay, seems like we have everybody.
very good. With that, we'll close that portion of the meeting. You can mute every general public again now.
Okay.
We'll continue with our next witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next, I would like to call Mr. Avelino Martinez, Blackbird Group Architects, the project architect for the proposed inclusionary development. If I could have him sworn.
Good evening.
Hey, just 1 second. I'm trying to find him here.
Oh, take your time. Thank you.
No, like, because I'm doing this on an iPad, on an iPhone. This didn't work well for me tonight. Hang on a second. I don't see Mr. Martinez online now. I had him.
He's on. He just
can see
chimed
it.
in.
Okay. I mean, I believe you, but I'm just, bear with me 1 second. All right, I don't see him, but I'll do without it. All right, Mr. Martinez, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Up there he is. Now I see him again. All right, Mr. Martinez. And please spell your name, which I could probably figure out how to spell it, and give us your address.
Sure. Avelino Martinez, Avelino. Last name Martinez, Martinez. Business address 190 Avenue L, Newark, New Jersey.
Your witness.
Thank you. Mr. Martinez, if you could just briefly for the board describe your education experience, licensure.
Sure. I have a bachelor's degree in architecture. I've been practicing for roughly 20 years. I'm licensed in the state of New Jersey to practice architecture as well as a number of other states. And I have not been before this board, but I have been accepted as a witness in architecture before a number of other boards in the state.
All right,
Thank
and
you.
are your licenses all current, Mr. Martinez?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend that Mr. Martinez be accepted as an expert in the field of architecture.
So be it. Welcome to the Garwood Planning Board.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Martinez, I believe you have an exhibit to present. If he could have the administrative role.
Yeah, it's just disabled. Let's see here.
I think you're the host now.
Okay. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
This will be Exhibit A2.
That's correct. So Exhibit A2 is effectively the drawings, architectural drawings that were submitted with the application. I'm referring to drawing A1 at this point, but it's a set of 9 drawings dated February 9th, 2021.
Wait a minute, just so that the record is clear, it's sheet A1, but it's being marked as A2 this evening?
Well,
That's
if I
correct.
may, I'd like to introduce the whole set as Exhibit A2, only because I'm going to use a number of drawings within that set. They're identical to the one submitted, with the exception we've added some color to make it easier, if that's acceptable.
I don't know if the board wants to mark each sheet individually. They are different from the submission set in that they're colored.
I don't, whatever your preference is on that, Mr. Flannery, I just thought it was a little confusing to me that, okay, it's A2, but we're calling A1 A2, you know?
Right. I mean, my preference would just have the entire set marked as A2. So it'd essentially be, colored rendering of the architectural submission set. Exhibit A2.
That's fine.
9 sheets total.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Martinez, if you could just briefly describe this exhibit and the proposed building.
Sure. So I'll give you, in general, as you heard, we have a number of questions. And when we come back.
I think you might be on mute, Mr. Martinez. No. We still can't hear him. There might be a technical issue.
Do you want to take a slight break and call him?
Yeah, let's do that if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman. Maybe you can
All right.
log back in.
We'll take a 5-minute recess right now. And Olivia, if you would, just make sure that the general public is muted.
Mr. Chairman, before we go into that recess, I'll just suggest that if anybody, any of the board members also during that recess want to take a look at the resolution. Or not.
I think that's an excellent idea, Don, that each of us should look at that a resolution. Steve, is that
Yeah,
okay?
hang on a second. Mr. Martinez, if you can hear me, you have to turn the control back over to the moderator.
I have control.
Yeah, I
You
think
have
it was
control?
sent
I took
back.
it back.
Okay, all right. And what was that, Kathy? I'm sorry.
Kathy was following up on my suggestion, Steve, that during the recess, members of the board might wish to take a look at the resolution.
Great, okay. That's a perfect idea, Kathy, thank you. Okay, with that, we're going to take a 5-minute recess, guys and ladies.
All right, very well. Thank you.
Thank you.
everyone hear me now?
I can hear.
Okay,
Yes.
Yes.
thank you.
What are they after? Please. What?
Okay, I think we'll wait another minute and then we'll proceed. Okay, Mr. Alvino, are you or Mr. Martinez, are you prepared to go forward now?
I am, if you can hear
Okay,
me.
great.
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so if I may, I'll share my screen. Hopefully everyone can see that as well.
Yes.
Okay. So in general overview, I know we have a lot of questions about the exterior of the building, the detailing, a lot of the specific interior layout and things of that nature, but I'd like to just give a general overview of the building. We'll come back at the following meeting and discuss a lot of those details. And of course, I'll answer any questions that I can this evening. So referring to Exhibit A2, which, as we mentioned, is the whole set, this would be the ground floor plan, so drawing A1. And on that plan, you see the general arrangement of the lower level. So as you saw through the civil testimony, we have primarily parking on the ground level. We have the lobby in the center of the building, and that lobby is the original castle structure, if you will, as it's referred to in the redevelopment plan. That portion of the building has been preserved from the original construction, has not been demolished. It will need to be rehabilitated, but that will form the primary lobby of the building. To the west of that, we have what's labeled as supportive amenity space. The final details of that we'll discuss in the future, but in general, that consists of a fitness center, a co-working space for residents who may wish to work from home, or things of that nature. And to the east of that is the Garwood Community Center. The redevelopment plan calls for a minimum of 4,000 square feet. We're currently proposing just over that at 4,339 square feet. If this application is so approved, the applicant would be working with the borough to finalize the layout of what is actually what is contained within that community center, but it does have access to an outdoor courtyard area to the east and some doors along the front. Access into the building is either through the existing stair into the castle structure from the street from North Avenue, or from the south side from the parking garage. And I know there was a question about accessibility and how that works. So just to clarify that, the lobby element, or that castle structure, the floor of that lobby is approximately 2 feet higher than the parking garage surface. So in order to do that, you come in through an accessible route, which is this door is flush with the parking garage. And then there's a series of steps that take you up to the lobby. In terms of the accessible route, the elevator on the west side here is a two-sided elevator. So that would allow somebody to enter from this side and take that elevator a short flight up to the main lobby floor. Then we have a second elevator, which doesn't have that feature, but also extends to the upper floors above. So while we're on this level, just to talk about trash for a moment, if you see on these two locations on the left and right, there's two compactor rooms within the building on the garage level. Those are fed with trash chutes from the upper floors, which you'll see in a moment. But in general, one of them houses refuse, so it's conventional garbage, if you will, goes into the chute, down the chute into that compactor, and then is compacted at about a 5-to-1 ratio into an enclosed dumpster. There's a second chute which handles recycling, so cans and bottles, if you will, and those are not compacted, but they go into an individual dumpster. So there's two of those arrangements, one on each side of the building. There is the ability to locate additional dumpsters within those rooms. So the trash enclosures we looked at on the civil drawings outside the building are really more of overflow garbage. So if there was ever a scenario where the trash couldn't be held within the room, that overflow would be going to those outdoor areas. And sometimes that happens with cardboards and things like that. So moving to the upper floors, and this would be referring to the drawing A3, which is our first floor plan. And just to clarify that for a moment, when we call this a first floor plan, that's really the first residential floor. Our lowest level is considered the garage level. So just for nomenclature, the first floor is really the second story of the building. So as you can see, the dwelling units are arranged around the common corridor around the building. So you have units to the north and to the south and the east and the west. In total, we have 124 dwelling units. Of those, 18 of them are affordable units. So we have 106 market rate units, 18 affordable units, and the affordable units are broken down into a mixture of 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms. The market rate units are only 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. So there's no 3-bedroom market rate units. So as you can see on the typical floor arrangement on the first floor, we have 40 dwelling units on this floor. We have an amenity deck, which is an elevated courtyard over the parking garage. And that's really comprised of pavers and some potted plants and things like that. So it's more of an outdoor seating area. We have a clubhouse located adjacent from the elevators, and that would contain basically ancillary amenities to that amenity deck. And then we have a leasing office on the north side, which would be looking out over North Avenue. And that is the second story of that castle structure. The trash rooms that I mentioned earlier are located on the west and the east side. And that really consists of just a room that you enter, has access to the 2 trash chutes, and would have some smaller containers for cardboard recycling. And then as you go up to the upper stories, the arrangement is very similar to the first floor, with the exception that the upper levels do not have amenity space. They're all dwelling units. And on the North Avenue side, the front elevation is set back. So that 2-story castle element exists in the middle, and then the balance of the building is effectively 4 stories. In terms of the exterior and the elevations, again, if just a brief overview, we're using a combination of brick, stucco, some cast stone, and some other elements, and we'll get into that in the next hearing. But by way of building height, I do want to just clarify how tall the building is. Per the redevelopment plan, the height of the building is measured from the garage floor to the top of the flat roof. That dimension is 47 feet, 8 inches. I know there was some confusion because there's a dimension on the drawings that indicates from the lobby to that top floor, but our actual height is 47 feet, 8 inches, where we're permitted 52 feet. So That's the general overview of the project. I guess given the fact that we'll be back for a second hearing, I'll probably, unless Mr. Flannery, you think I missed anything, I'd probably just take questions.
Just really quickly, Mr. Martinez, in the review memos, there were some building-related issues you might want to address now, unless you think that we should just defer those for the subsequent hearing. I'm thinking specifically some of the fire chief's comments regarding buildings.
I think we'll have to defer the fire comments to the next hearing. I think some of those involve our alarm and fire protection specialists, which we really haven't had an opportunity to confer with, but I don't think any of those are an issue, but we'll come back to that.
Okay, and then just really briefly, if we could just, because I know this was talked about at length during the engineering testimony, just describe the process for collecting trash and recyclables in the building and how that's transported to.
So how that would work from the upper levels, you would go into the trash room and you have access to 2 trash chutes on either side. So again, one of them is the trash chute. So you would open the door, insert trash into that chute. It goes down to a compactor. That compactor compacts the trash into a sealed dumpster. The recycling bottles and cans would go down into an independent dumpster. So then just looking at that on the ground floor plan. So again, we're on Exhibit A2. This is the ground floor plan. We have the trash compactor and the secondary dumpster. So those dumpsters are typically 2-yard, sometimes 3-yard dumpsters. So they're not enormous. They fit through a double door. And they can be easily wheeled out. So depending on how the private trash company would be operating this building, many times that dumpster is wheeled out to a certain location where it's picked up, and then the empty dumpster is wheeled back in, or they may approach the building and load at that point. Same concept with the recycling as well.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, Steve Greet, the chair. What is the height of the parapet?
So the height of the parapet is 42 inches. It varies in height, but the tallest point is 42 inches, so 3.5 feet.
Okay, thank you. Anyone from the board? Questions?
Mr. Chairman, Bill?
Bill.
Thank you. Mr. Martinez, how are you?
Very well, thanks.
Good. If you can provide a couple of things for the next meeting, I'd really appreciate it. Can you break down the units into their unit size? The size of the 1-bedroom, size of the 2-bedroom, size of the 3? That would be appreciated.
I can give you a general overview of that. I don't have every single unit for you, but I can tell you that our 1-bedrooms are averaged to be about 910 square feet, and these are averages. Our 2-bedroom are average 1,500 square feet, and those are our market rate units. The affordable units are slightly smaller. Well, I should say the 2-bedrooms are. The 1-bedrooms are the same average size, 910 square feet, and the 2-bedrooms are 1,050 square feet, and our 3-bedrooms are 1,165 square feet.
I appreciate that. You don't have to answer this now, but I always wonder how we end up with odd numbers for square footage, but I'll let that go. You can explain that to me another day.
Okay.
One of the, there's an indication that one of these units, and I don't know if you're the right person or someone else, but talks about a group home provision.
Yes.
Are you, Mr. Flannery, is Mr. Martinez the one to get into that or someone else?
We can defer that to the next hearing.
Okay, appreciate that. And I don't know what everyone else thinks. And Mr. Martinez, I did hear you. I did understand what you said about first, second, and third floor plan. But I'm sorry, there's second, third, and fourth. And am I the only one who would ask, can you change those to second, third, and fourth? I mean, it's a 4-story building. We have 4 floors, and to see there's only a first, second, and third floor plan, I could see the public saying, where's the 4th floor? Am I just totally inconsistent with architecture, or can that be done?
No, we can do that for the purposes of clarifying it because it does get a little confusing. The reason why we do it is, for example, elevators, typically that elevator would show G for the ground floor and then 1, 2, and 3 corresponding to the upper floors. The unit numbers also sort of work like that. So 101 to 130 and then 201. So that's the only reason we call it first. But it sounds like we're resubmitting these drawings. I'm happy to change the designations just to avoid any
If
confusion.
everybody else feels the same way, that would be appreciated.
I'm not sure about that, Bill. I think having the
Okay.
ground floor makes sense.
Ground 1, 2, and 3?
Yeah. I mean, that's my opinion.
Well, I agree with Bill. The ground floor should be the ground floor, but then the first floor on the floor plan should read the second floor.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Appreciate that, Mike. Then you fix in the morning.
And I always thought the G stood for garage.
Maybe it does. You indicated that, some design is still necessary in regards to the, amenities. I couldn't agree with you more. Seeing space that just says amenity, and you mentioned it being, like a passive sitting area, but obviously there are no benches or no design yet. Would really appreciate seeing, some type of design within those amenity spaces. That would be appreciated. You're not going to touch signs, I assume?
No, if we can defer that to the next hearing, just
Okay.
because we'll have that better detailed for you.
That's fine. That's fine. And I'm sorry, it feels as if I have other stuff. I appreciate Mr. Flannery's question to you regarding the trash. If you guys can, take that waste management plan that we talked about earlier and really take it from, one unit, all the way out to garbage being in the truck out to the street, I'd appreciate it. Because to me, it still doesn't work. And the idea of, I'm not sure now if the dumpsters themselves are going to be wheeled into after the compactor, if they're going to be wheeled out from underneath the building and into the driveway. It still seems to me that we're going to have dumpsters in the driveway. So I'd appreciate that explanation. Hang on a second. Victor has it in his review, page 8. It's actually after the architectural, but nobody's discussed, when we talked about the parking earlier, I don't see any bike racks, as Victor has mentioned. If they can be provided someplace, appreciate it. And you see all his comments on page 7 of his review regarding lighting and what have you. Appreciate getting into that next meeting. And Mr. Chairman, I think that's it for the architect.
Okay, what I would like to see for our next meeting, and Victor, you can weigh in on this. I'd really like to, for the next meeting, hopefully you'll have all the changes that are necessary. And I would like to go item by item and do a check off and see how we look as far as the items that were addressed and possibly ones that needed changing or were not addressed. So I'd like to see when we get into the nuts and bolts with the engineers, various engineering aspects of it, that we actually do go step by step by step.
Mr. Chairman,
We will
may
do
I
that.
here?
Yeah.
Quick question for you, Mr. Martinez. I just want to confirm the makeup of the affordable units, that it's 2 one-bedroom, 12 two-bedroom, and 4 three-bedroom.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman Great, Paul Tarantino. I had seen on some of the drawings that it looked like the ground level south elevation to the parking garage appeared to be completely open with no barrier. Is that correct?
Well, that's correct in the sense that there's no wall. There will be a vehicle barrier along the south side of that. That's more of a civil testimony issue, so we'll probably come back to that, but it will be open and it will provide ventilation, but there will be a means to keep vehicles from going through there, if you will.
Is there any reason why it was being provided? fully open as opposed to punched windows that are on the North Avenue side?
I mean, there's a series of columns. We didn't have a wall, and one of the reasons is we try to have as much ventilation as possible, but it just wasn't part of the design to have the wall enclosing that at this time.
And then do you know what the distance is to the railroad tracks?
I don't know what the distance is to the tracks. We're approximately 17 feet to the property line at the tightest point, so it gets a little further. I'd have to defer to the civil engineer for the actual placement of the tracks relative to that, but I would have to assume you're at least 20 feet.
And no issues with security and people going through the garage, walking along the tracks?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't know if there's a fence planned for this area, but that, again, that would be more of a civil issue. We can ask.
We'll address that at the next hearing with our supplemental engineering testimony.
Thank you.
And Paul, would you accept the same question being asked about noise?
Yes.
You can address that then too. That'd be great.
We can address that next time, definitely.
And that's obviously for the living spaces.
That's right.
Chairman,
Yes.
I have a couple questions. Kathy Villaggio. The HVAC for each apartment, is it self-sustained? Is it within each apartment, or?
So they're
gonna be, what are you proposing?
Yeah, so the system is very similar to what you would have in a single family home. It's basically an air handler that sits within the apartment inside of a closet, and then you have a condensing unit very similar, if not identical, to what you'd have on a single family home. Those outdoor condensing units are located on the roof. So typically they're approximately 30 inches tall, and we have parapets that are approximately 42 inches tall, so they wouldn't be visible from any point at grade.
Okay. And what type of windows are you proposing?
So they're a double hung window. We haven't selected a manufacturer at this point, but it's a traditional window, with a bottom sash that moves up and down.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
I have a question for the elevator systems.
Yes.
Is that going to be a keyed system where you'll have to have a pass card or some type of access code in order to get up to the upper levels?
I mean, we can talk to the applicant about the operation of that. Typically in a building like this, they are not, no.
Are you going to have anybody in the lobby, any security or any type of a person, a lobby designee?
We can talk to the applicant about that in terms of operations, but I wouldn't expect that there would be. Typically the lobby doors are secured, so somebody from the exterior couldn't come in without having a key to get into the main lobby or being buzzed in. And then from there, they can access the elevator and the upper floors.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman, to follow up on your point, I really liked hearing about the elevator connectivity there to the community center. So I would just want to make sure that members of the Garwood community outside of this development, of course, those inside the development will be Garwoodians as well, but those outside that are trying to access the community center, for instance, for senior citizen activity or something, it would be beneficial for them to have access to that elevator. So I hope that we can hear more about that in the future.
Good.
Can I add to what the mayor just said? That's a very good point, because right now, based upon what you just said, if they parked in underneath, I guess they park over to the right or to the east of the center itself. They'd have to then go through the
parking under on the ground floor of the building to get to that elevator, as the mayor just indicated. And then they couldn't get into the lobby because they're not going to have a key or anything. So how did they get into the Garwood Center?
Well, to that point, I do want to just clarify that the doors around the perimeter of the community center are all at grade. So these will be accessible entrances. They won't require using an elevator or anything to get in there. So
Thank you.
So just to clarify, Mr. Martinez, the Garwood Center visitors would not use the parking garage. They would use the spaces in the lot to the east and then access through the at-grade entrances to the center itself.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Seeing none, Mr. Martinez, I guess you'll have to give control back over to our administrator so that she can open it up for questions of the general public.
Mr. Chair, just
questions.
Really quickly, I was wondering if he's so inclined, if Mr. Venega could comment on the building height issue that Mr. Martinez had described, just to see if he's in agreement with our interpretation.
Absolutely. Victor?
Yeah, well, so far the way you have it, you're within 10% of the building height required, so this board can hear this application. Any higher than that, they couldn't.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else from the board before I pass it over to the public? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Martinez, Olivia, I guess you can open the lines up to the general public.
Okay.
Any questions from the public concerning specific to this witness or to this expert? Seeing none, we'll close that portion of the meeting. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have another person you want to present to us tonight?
I do. We have another architect for the self-storage facility, Richard Bensavenga. I think he'll be relatively brief. If we could have him on next, I think that would be beneficial.
And would that tend to wrap up your presentations then tonight?
Well, it's really up to the board. I don't know if the next witness gets through, if we can put on our planner, who should also be very brief, but we'd like to do that ideally, but of course it's up to the board. I'm not sure what the rule is in terms of new witnesses, but we'd like to get the next two witnesses in who, the planning testimony will be very brief, and the architect will be maybe 10, 15 minutes.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you.
With that, please present your next witness.
Thank you. My next witness is our architect for the self-storage facility, Mr. Richard Bensavenga, RA, if I could have him sworn in.
Okay, I see him. Mr. Bensavenga, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, please spell your name and give your address, please.
My name's Richard Bensavenga, Bensavenga. My business address is 63 North Lakeview Drive, Gibbsboro, New Jersey.
Your witness, counsel.
Thank you. Mr. Bensavenga, if you could just briefly for the board describe your education experience and licensure.
I hold a Bachelor of Science in Architectural Technology. I got my initial license in New Jersey in 1994. I've testified in front of several boards in the state of New Jersey. My license is current. I'm licensed in several states as well, and have been admitted to those boards as well.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend that Mr. Bensavenga be accepted as an expert in field architecture.
Yes, welcome. We're accepting you as an expert.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bensavenga, I believe you have an exhibit as well.
Yes, I do. I'd like to present the building elevation.
This will be Exhibit A3.
It's it's two drawings. My drawing's A2.1 and A2.2. Do I have the screen? I do.
I think you have control now. It's just a matter of sharing the
Yep.
screen.
What I have here is the building elevations for the proposed self-storage. It's a combination of brick and stucco, and and it's sort of in keeping in character with the adjacent residential property as well. I want to talk about a couple of the different items that we have going on that we did to sort of make the street facade a lot appealing, have a lot of visual interest. One of which is the articulation of the top of the parapets along the building facade. And you can see it varies as you go along the building. And this being the north elevation, this is what faces the main street. We do have some display windows on the facade as well. We break down the panels using different colored stucco and score joints, and we provide a nice cornice detail at the top. And then down along the street facade, we bring down some elements to bring it into a streetscape. We've added a canopy along the front of the building as well to, again, keeping with the streetscape. And the materials are consistent across the adjacent sides of the design. As you can see, this is the side that faces our parking lot and what everybody's calling the east side of the property is wrapped around, and we continue that as well with the canopy across the bottom. And then I'm going to bring up A2.2, which is the same drawing set. And as we come around the building that faces the apartments, you can see again, we're keeping in character with the combination of brick and stucco, modulating the parapet tops. And then as we come along the back of the building that faces the railroad track, again, it's a combination of stucco. My screen's regenerating. Here it is. And then along the bottom are openings into our drive-through covered loading area. I wanted to talk to a couple of issues that were brought up. One is the building height. The top of the low point of our roof is at 50 feet, which is below the redevelopment. And I believe the top, once we slope the roof for drainage, will be at 52 and below. We do have a parapet where we're looking for a little bit of relief. And it's the one that is our main focal point on our elevation. We're at 56'8". We're at 8 inches above the 4-foot maximum of the ordinance. And our parapets, much like the residential, are designed to keep our rooftop equipment concealed from the street level. And then I also want to talk about our signage, where we're asking for some relief. I believe the ordinance is limited to 40 square feet. Our building is a little bit, we're putting the sign up high on the building to help aid in wayfinding as you're driving down North Avenue towards the building. Gives you time when you're driving 35 miles an hour to see the building and identify it as, where the entrance would be, which is adjacent to this display feature on our building. We're showing 2 signs. Each is 97 square feet apiece, I believe, which is about 1% of the facade. And on the adjacent side, the shorter side, it's about 2% of the facade, a little bit larger. And the height of the sign also allows visibility as, the site's being nicely landscaped with trees along the streetscape. So elevating the sign helps with the branding of our property. So we think it's appropriate for the architectural character of the building and what we're trying to achieve.
Thank you.
That covers my testimony.
Yeah, I believe that's all the direct we have. If the board has any questions.
Chairman Greet, it's Paul Tarantino.
Yeah, Paul.
I have a question for you or Mayor Tedisco. Wasn't there an agreement with the developer that this storage facility needed to maintain the character of the apartment complex?
Yes.
Yes.
As I remember.
Well, it is my opinion that this building, as it's designed, does not meet or match the character that's been presented for the apartment complex. This is going to look like a giant warehouse with no windows. I know that there's punched windows and you're going to see the roll-up yellow doors behind the windows to the east side, but the west side of the building is going to look like a 4-story warehouse.
Can you speak
So
to that?
that's my comment.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
And we'll have more final plans and testimony at the next hearing as Mr. Martinez had mentioned regarding architecture.
We can look at that as well. And
Yeah,
bring it back.
we all would agree, I think, on the board, that we would want this to look as a unified structure actually belonging to the 124 unit residential. You know, to make it look different is not going to be appealing, I don't think, to anyone on this board from that standpoint. So Paul brings up a very, very good point. And I would strongly encourage you to look at that and maybe come back with some enhanced design work on this.
We'll take that under advisement.
Mr. Chairman, Bill?
Yeah, Bill.
I want to second and third what both you and Paul said. That was the very first thing that caught my eye. So, I apologize, Ben Savenga.
That's correct.
I would appreciate it, if you'd look at that also. Could you do me a favor and walk us through how a person going to store something in this building, how it actually works?
Sure, I'll bring up my first floor plan.
Because you're saying the main entrance is actually on the east side, correct?
Yes, can you see my screen?
We'll mark this A4, it's the floor plan.
A4. So our parking facility is on this area here, which typically is utilized by store staff, retail staff, which is maximum of 2 people at a time, 3 if the district manager is in town. Mostly our customers will be coming in at this arrow through the drive-through, and they'll be parking up against the building here in this area or this area. And the predominant customer base will be entering the building through this lobby, and there's a control point door here. And if your storage unit is on the first floor, you would come through there and find your way to your storage unit. If you're on the upper floor, you would enter the elevator, enter an access code, which would allow you to your floor, which you then could access your storage unit, and it's laid out in a very similar way as I'll pull that drawing up. You can see the elevated floors. This is floors 2 through 4. They're quite similar. And again, you would exit your elevator and navigate your way to your storage unit.
So you don't have ground 1, 2, 3. You actually have 1, 2, 3, 4.
I was waiting for that, Bill.
I knew that was coming too. I knew it was coming.
Well, you and Mr. Martinez can work together on that. Okay, so I see how it works. Now, how do you, as an architect for self-storage, how do you determine the size of these units relative to the market?
So there's typically a market rate study done by the developer, and they do an analysis of what the area yield is currently in the marketplace versus what the demand is as what they believe is the proposed need. But the industry itself is based on a 5x5 module. So we provide 5x5s, 5x10s, and progressively to a 10 by 10 and so on up to a 10 by 30 unit. And they're all fairly standard in sizes. So that, and that's the way they develop a unit mix.
If it's not proprietary, is there some way to get that market study or to get some kind of an?
That is proprietary information.
It is.
It is proprietary across all of the different self-storage facilities.
Okay. How is security done in terms of what people are bringing into these units?
So I represent many self-storage companies across the country, and they all have a standard lease agreement in where the lease agreement spells out specifically what you can and cannot store.
Is it possible to get a copy of that lease agreement?
Yes, you can. I'll have that available.
Because I think, and I don't speak for them, of course, but I'm sure the fire department would like to see what's in that. So I appreciate that. I find the comments you made about the signage to be interesting because we made the same comments relative to ShopRite when they came in. People aren't going down North Avenue looking for self-storage. You generally Google it and find out where they are. I would have said phone book, but you know.
Well, it's interesting in that.
So my question regarding signage is, and it kind of goes back to Mr. Tarantino's comment about the buildings meshing. I don't really want this building to stand out. Not to get competitive here, but I think, obviously the borough is more interested in the redevelopment plan is more interested and has more comments about the architecture of the apartment structure. And this is obviously much more functional. But at the same time, I don't see this big signs. I don't see people going down a block saying, oh, hey, there's a self-storage. Why do we need such big signs? And I don't want to get into the planning testimony with variance, but why do you propose size?
So from what I understand and what I hear from all the various different storage companies I represent is there's primarily two ways that they receive their customer base. One is, yes, we Google it. That's a modern thing that we do Google and find location. But the other is that, by driving by and remembrance of there's a self-storage facility. It's not a commodity that we go to on a weekly basis to shop like at a pharmacy or a grocery store. This is something that people, when they determine the need, due to life circumstances, they have too much things in their house, family member passes, and I got to do something with grandma's belongings. Then they remember, oh, there's a self-storage facility because I drove by it. So proximity to the self-storage facility and remembrance of where it is quite important to the
well, what I would put forth, and we'll hear other testimony, but what I would put forth is in the civil engineer site design, we have two crosswalks that the police department are concerned about. And they're concerned about, obviously, people crossing that street, and we'll get into that with the traffic engineer. But I want people looking grade level. I don't want them looking 40-foot high at a big sign. And I don't know what my fellow board members feel, but I'm waiting for other testimony, but I don't really support the request for sign variances. I don't think that's what the borough is looking for. So I'll just lay that out there for you. And the other thing is, this is the structure that's actually requesting, excuse me, is making the application require variances. So point blank, you're proposing a building that doesn't meet lot coverage. It exceeds lot coverage. Why?
So I'll defer that to civil and planner because of the nature of the proportions of the building. The development plan was based on a 1 acre lot, and if this is a 1.1 acre lot, so we're proportionately larger, not so we think that it's within reason, but I'll defer that to the planner.
And I appreciate that, Mr. Flannery. I expect some testimony there, but to me, it's the architect who designs this building. And I don't see why it has to be beyond what the maximum is within the redevelopment plan.
And we can have the planner address those issues, Mr. Nurstead.
Now, I don't think that planning testimony is going to be as quick as you think.
Bill, as soon as I heard planning testimony was going to be super quick, I was like, really?
Can I ask one question, please? Ken Capobianco.
Yeah, Ken.
So, Mr. Bensavenia, can you explain the rear of the property to me where the drive-through is? So how tall is that opening?
Let me pull it up for you.
Thanks.
So our floor-to-floor height from grade to the second floor is 18 feet, as you can see here. This is a 3-foot wall, and I would guess that the opening, not having its dimension, is probably, like 10 to 12 feet tall.
Okay. So there would be some limits for certain vehicles to go through.
No, as far as the drive-through, our clear height is going to be 14 feet.
Okay.
So that's the minimum. That's the height that's set that's industry standard as far as to be able to get a U-Haul truck through, or even a fire truck should the need
So
be.
now, what is the width of that drive-through?
So our door opening at both ends will be 12 feet wide.
Okay. So I see there are parking spaces listed right up against the building itself. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. How wide are those parking spaces? And I don't see that if you're driving a van that you will be able to get out the right side doors to open them up to unload your vehicle.
So it's 9 feet wide.
Definitely not. Okay. So you can only use the rear doors of a vehicle. So if people are pulling up in a car, they're going to be taking everything out the sides or the trunk, but also using the side doors. They won't
Correct.
be able to open up the right side doors. They're going to be out into the driveway part.
Well, yeah, the driver's side door would be, yeah.
Okay.
And then our driveway between what we believe the columns is 13 foot plus wide.
Okay.
And then the total width will be about 15 feet plus.
And then the rear wall is open. Is that correct?
That is
there's
correct.
plenty of natural light coming in during the day.
Yes. And ventilation.
Okay. Thank you.
Those units up against those storage units that abut the parallel parking, do they have
Yes.
roll-up doors?
They do.
Then if someone's parked in front of your unit, how do you get access to your roll-up door?
So this is a common question actually that comes up in self-storage, is that we have these long buildings with drive-up doors, and the frequency that the customers are there, it tends to not really happen because of the low frequency of people coming and going with their storage product. But this is a common scenario that occurs in the self-storage industry, where the parking is up against the storage units.
Why don't you take your parking and put it on the other side of the roadway?
Well,
You're not blocking the overhead doors.
We could look at that, but
Put it against the rear wall.
Then we look at it as, again, people are on the other side of the drive aisle. It's a little bit further to the door, a little bit further to the elevator.
Yeah, but I'd rather have that than someone blocking my overhead door when I go to my storage unit. I can't get in.
We can look at that.
Yeah, I would want the parking to be moved to the other side. It only makes sense.
So I didn't even know that they were roll-up doors there. I assumed when you were talking about the base, the first level, I assumed you were walking in past the elevators, going down the corridor, and they were like 30 foot. They were the long ones. And I thought you entered them all from the inside. So they're accessible from the outside of the building.
Yeah,
Yes,
I've done these facilities before, and I've always allocated, I had the car parking perpendicular to the overhead door, so that would be attributed to each one. But this design, because this is very little bit of, you have very few parking spaces in this layout. Now, granted, these facilities don't demand a lot of parking spaces, but, you know, I definitely want those parking spaces moved away.
I have a question for you. This is the chair again. Do you have a tenant for this building?
Excuse me?
Do you have a tenant for this building yet?
An operator.
An operator.
And right now the brand operator is Life Storage.
Okay.
It's one of the largest operator brands in the country. You have I don't want to start naming other brands, but Life Storage is one of the top.
Okay, thank you.
One more question, please, Ken Capobianco. If you know this, is when you're talking about the brand and things that are going in there, is this a leased property, or is this separation of the two properties going to be off?
What we have is what they call third-party management. So it's not leased by Life Storage from the ownership. Ownership owns the property, is responsible for the property. Life Storage maintains what they call the call centers. They provide the management staff and the day-to-day operation, but its ownership actually owns and operates and maintains the facility.
So that brand could feasibly change over time.
It could change from Life Storage to somebody else. That's possible.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Flannery, Bill Nearstead. Mr. Flannery?
Yes.
In addition to getting the other information we asked regarding the lease agreement or lease arrangement with the operator, since we don't know anything about, you know, Life, can you provide some information to us regarding the operator?
I think we can do that. Yeah, we can provide
Okay.
some promotional materials.
Okay. Anyone else from the board? Any questions?
Yeah. Last question. It concerns operation, and I fully understand that, you know, this is not a high-use facility. I fully recognize. I remember when these first came out, you know, municipalities were requiring all kinds of parking and, you know, looking at it as a warehouse. And I realize that's not necessary, but are there times, and I don't know if the traffic statement addresses this, but are there times of high usage? When this opens up, should we be anticipating high use? Are there time periods of the day, time periods during the year where there are indeed higher uses that the borough needs to be aware of?
That's something that's not within my discipline to answer.
Yeah, the traffic engineer will address all these issues.
Well, with all, I hate saying that with all due respect. The architect designed this, and the operator, I see this as more of an operations than I see it as traffic. Can Life or can someone from operations provide us some of that information? Because that information is only going to be fed to the traffic engineer. And if you can feed it to us too, we would appreciate that.
I'm going to yield to Mr. Flannery on that.
Yeah, we'll discuss it internally. The traffic impact statement does address, you know, peak hours and traffic impacts of this use, but we can certainly discuss internally and make sure that the traffic engineer is fully aware of operational aspects of the self-storage facility.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone
Steve,
else?
I have a question. Steve, with regard to the fire department's request, will this building be sprinkled? Splink?
Ms. Bellagio, yes, absolutely.
Okay. And there will be fire department hookups that, you know, water?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, Councilman Grant.
Yeah. Russ.
Yeah, I held off addressing the fire department. Mr. Flannery did mention the list, or the other architect did, but you know, I looked through all the plans, and there simply isn't any plumbing detail, any piping detail at all. So I know that information is forthcoming. So that's why I kind of held off even addressing that. You know, I think all the correct answers are being given. It's just we just don't see it yet. So I anticipate obviously having all that detail, you know, further on, and then I know all those questions that the chief brought up will be answered. So thank you.
Yes, Mr. Graham, we will address those, the review letter in detail at the next hearing. Now, in terms of showing all the pipes and other, I don't, you know, these aren't construction level drawings or site plan drawings, but to the extent that it's an issue raised in the review email, we'll certainly address it at the next hearing.
Okay. Anyone else from the board? Okay, can we throw the command over to the administrator, please?
I've got it.
Okay, great. At this time, we'll offer the public any specific questions of this particular witness. So you can open it up to the general public.
Everyone's lines are open.
Okay, is there anybody from the general public who wishes to ask a question of this witness? Hearing none, I'll close this portion of the meeting as well. And we'll look back for to find out where we're going to proceed on this right now.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Flannery?
Yeah, I do have my planning witness, Mr. Paul Rickey. We'd like to put him on if that's okay with the board. I know the hour is late.
Well, I can assure you that if you put him on, there's going to be a lot of questions concerning the planning. We can do that, but we're gonna limit it to 10:30. So you can present maybe. I don't know how you want to work it. You have about 20 minutes left, 15 minutes left.
Right.
And then I also would like to question you. I know there's a lot of information that you have to update on your prints and also to Victor's office as well. Are you going to be able to provide all this documentation by the time our next meeting is in order on the 28th?
That is our intent, Mr. Chairman. You know, we'd like to move to the date certain tonight. I believe the next meeting is on July 28th. We're going to try our best to have everything resolved before then. To the extent we can't, you know, we'll have to just renotice for a subsequent hearing. But yeah, we're going to try to get this all wrapped up in time for the July hearing.
And Mr. Chairman, on that subject, and Don, appreciate your input. That revised information has to be submitted 10 days prior to that meeting, correct?
Yes.
That's correct.
All right, so you're really looking at the
18th of July, which gives us about a month.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, that means, listen, that's up to the applicant, Bill.
Got it. So anyway, with that, again, we have about 15 minutes left tonight. We know we're not going to get through your planner completely tonight, or
right,
to ask any questions other than to just listen. In my opinion, I would think you might want to carry your planner start and finish on the next meeting.
I totally agree, Mr. Chairman. If we only have 15 minutes or so, I don't see the point in beginning testimony.
Yeah.
You know, with questions and comments, it's going to be later than 15 minutes, certainly.
I think it's going to be a lot later, quite honestly. So with that, then if you want to wrap it up for tonight with a kind of a general statement or whatever, or you're going to go with this with the next meeting, that's fine.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we'd like to carry this, without the need for any further notice to the board's next meeting. We'd also like to arrange a meeting. We can do this offline with Mr. Vinegra to discuss these outstanding issues. If Mr. Vinegra has his calendar available, maybe we can propose some dates now, just so we can nail it down. Otherwise we could do it offline, but.
Okay. Victor? Victor?
Yep, I'm available next week. If you want, you can do it via email, so you can pick some dates next week.
Okay.
If it's available.
Maybe the 29th or the 30th. We'll send emails around, but I think those are the dates that our professionals were available.
Yeah, 30th looks good.
Okay. So let's tentatively aim for the 30th. We'll send an email to confirm June 30th. And then the next hearing will be, I believe, July 28th.
July 28th, yeah.
With, of course, the 10-day deadline for
Right.
submitting.
Right. If you can't make, if you're not able to make that date, then we need to know that, within the 10, within the.
We'll provide you with as much advance notice as we can provide.
Okay, great. Very good.
All right, well, let's address though first, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for the presentation tonight. And I quite honestly, I think we all understood, including your client, that, we would not be able to proceed with any kind of a vote on anything tonight at this point in time. So
Understood.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the overview. I think that helped both your client and our board as well. So with that, thank you, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the 28th.
All right,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman, before we leave that subject, let's just circle back to what we discussed at the beginning of the meeting with what it's going to be on the 28th, the fact that it's going to be in person, as we discussed earlier, and the subject of notice to the public.
Correct.
All right.
Will
So,
is this
go
going
ahead,
to
Bill.
require a new notice because we're going to be meeting in Borough Hall?
Well, that's what we're discussing right now, Bill. And it seems to me that logically it does not. Because it seems to me that logically, anybody, if we were carrying the meeting virtually, we would be telling them right now, to everybody who's in this meeting virtually, that we're continuing this meeting virtually on July 28th at such point via the Ring modality. So we can just as easily give those people notice right now, it seems to me, that we're going to be continuing on July 28th in person at Borough Hall. So I don't think that there's a logical reason why that has to be different. I think that it is the discretion of the board, what the board wants to require in terms of notice. I think, in my opinion, the board would have the authority, if the board were so inclined, to say, at this meeting now, we're continuing at this hearing in person on July 28, and fair notice has been given to the public. But it never hurts to give more notice.
Adele?
If I could just,
Weigh in on this a little bit.
yes, if I could just add that I will be revising the board's notice because our previous notice stated that we were meeting remotely until further notice. So I will just be amending the board's general annual notice to state that we will now be meeting in person. So I agree with Don. I think that sufficiently covers us.
That's great.
Adele, so Adele, you're saying that you're going to have to publish in the newspaper another notice.
Yes, I'm going to republish our annual notice.
Okay. Thank you.
And that should be more than sufficient with us detailing the fact that now, and this is for the general public's knowledge, whoever's attending right now, is that our next meeting scheduled for July 28th with this application is going to be carried, and it's going to be in person at Borough Hall. And then there'll be also notification in the local newspapers as well.
Right, and this is notice to the public that that's happening, and people interested in this application, if this is what the board decides to do, are being advised right now. There will be no additional mailed or published notice about this application. You're being told now, and this is your notice, that we're continuing this application on July 28 in person.
Thank you. Mr. Flannery, thank you again for
Thank you.
participating tonight, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the 28th.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Mr. Flannery, before you go, the chairman has the last word. Before you go, we really didn't get into the police report. I hope that when you meet with Victor, or in addition to meeting with Victor, that you're also going to meet with the police. They have some specific requests. Please answer, if you have the architects, please answer, all the fire departments. We don't have to go through that. And the other items, the waste management, the parking management, all those other items, looking forward to seeing them.
We will do so, Mr. Nierstedt.
And there will also be discussion, I'm sure, on the stormwater requirements.
Of course, Mr. Chairman.
From Cranford.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, did Mr. Flannery get the Cranford letter?
Yes, that was received, and we discussed that internally, and that we will address that.
Okay, very good. Again, I thank you, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the 28th.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flannery. Moderator, Olivia, if you could, open it up to the general public for any general comments from them at this point in time.
Mr. Chairman, don't forget you have a resolution.
I know, we'll do that right after this.
Okay, everyone has the ability to unmute themselves now. No one is muted by me.
Okay, great. Anybody from the general public have any comments?
We've had several people drop as well.
Oh, okay, then seeing none, we'll close that portion of the meeting. We have the resolution. If everybody is comfortable with the resolution, if you've had an opportunity to review it for the few minutes that we had as an intercession, or prior to the meeting tonight, I would entertain a motion to accept the resolution as stated, with the exception. Don, you mentioned at the end you have Kathy's signature block. That's fine. I don't have a problem with it, but I mean, I was there, and that was the.
Oh, I know, Mr. Chairman, I worked off a template that I guess was from a meeting you weren't in.
Okay, so it doesn't matter if that's.
No, you're the chairman.
Okay.
You just cross Kathy's name out and sign yours.
Okay, all right, very good.
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the resolution as written.
Kathy, you second?
Yeah, I'll second, but can I just also make a comment that on the second page, B, that there's a mistake, that there's a typo?
Right,
It
the
should be,
word is real estate, not real estate.
Yeah. Sorry.
Don't be sorry, it's my error.
I second the motion with that change.
Okay, great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Vote.
Yeah.
Individual vote.
Yeah.
Go
Ken
ahead.
Capabianco,
Yes.
Stephen Greet,
Yes.
Kathy Villaggio,
Yes.
Paul Tarantino,
Yes.
Mike Vina,
Yes.
and Mr. Barkin did not join us, right? No. Motion carries.
Okay, great. So our resolution is accepted. Adele, I don't have it in front of me, bills and claims.
Yes, so I had circulated them electronically. There were, I think, 4 of them. If you'd like, I can read them into the record. There was
I would
one.
appreciate it, yeah.
$905 for South Avenue redevelopment Phase 1. There's one, these are all Harbor Consultants, $217.50. That's also for South Avenue redevelopment phase 1. Oh, I'm sorry, I scratched that last one. That was an error. $2,312.50 for 75 North Avenue, the self-storage. And 10 South Avenue, the Lidl application for $3,105.
Make a
Great.
motion.
Do I hear a motion?
Second.
Okay, good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. One last item of business. Dale, obviously, you already stated that you're not going to be here for the 28th. Sarah, do we have somebody who can fill in for Adele for that meeting?
How does that usually work? Would we
We don't
send?
let Adele miss meetings.
Yeah, she doesn't miss a meeting.
Well, exactly, because she's phenomenal, but she's allowed to have a night off too. So would we have the borough clerk fill in?
I think Tina normally would substitute, would she?
No, I think, what's her name? I think,
Sandy?
what's her name?
Kathy Cameron?
No.
Kathleen?
No, not the, yeah.
I mean,
Kathleen did it once.
I can do what I can do to set up the room in advance. And then if one of the board members wants to call roll, I don't, you know.
That's actually what we have done in the past.
Right.
What we've done in the past is Adele sets up the room, Adele leaves us with the recorder, I take roll, and either I or the chairman turn on the recorder.
All right, that sounds fine to me, so long as we've got it covered. Okay, that'll work.
And just want to remind everybody, you know, I don't know what everybody's doing right now, but make sure you wear pants to the meeting in public.
Everybody stand
All
up.
right, well, listen, I thank everybody's participation. It was kind of a lengthy meeting, but I think it was well worthwhile. I think we ironed out some of the bumps that we're going to run up against next meeting, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
I just can't believe that we were actually debating that we were going to do the planner.
I don't know what you're talking
I
about.
was Bill Nearstead.
I was ready to go.
I know.
I know you would have been ready to go until 12 o'clock tonight. I know that.
Oh, no. No, I wouldn't. You know, not all of us are retired, Steve, you know?
Almost.
Well, only appear to be retired.
Actually, Maria's retiring in 8 days.
There you go. Bingo. Soon, and I'm sure the hubby's going to be soon to follow.
We'll see.
Anyway, I appreciate everybody's participation and have it.
And we'll,
Make a
next
motion.
month, we'll see everybody
Yeah.
in person.
We'll all be together again.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Right.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. So long. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Livia.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Livia. Good night,
You're welcome.
everybody.
Good night.
Night.